is.
Well, there it is. Hey, this is Witty and welcome to the Night Elf Build Order video guide. In this build order video guide I shall be covering the Night Elf standard build order that I performed earlier, and then briefly after that I will be going over 9 replays very quickly, otherwise this video will take forever, and I will be showing you the various unit compositions that Night Elf will use versus various different races, and it varies. I've got 3 replays versus humans, 1 versus orc, 2 versus undead, and 3 versus Night Elf, and they should be up on the screen at the moment. If you want to click on any one of those, it will take you to that point in the video where I start discussing that replay, that commentary, etc. If you want access to any of the replays, including the standard build order, then feel free to check out the brief description and you will be able to get any of the replays that I cover in this video. Now, this build order video guide is not exactly perfect, but I do think that this roughly represents what I think you should be doing as a Night Elf player if you are playing standard, aka playing safe. Night Elf is the hardest, I believe. It feels that way anyway, to actually get a solid build order for, because they are a very reactive race. They often pick up mercenaries, and this complicates things greatly because the maps vary, the distances between creeping, using the Ancient of War to creep, and also picking up mercenaries. Everything just is quite difficult to actually build one particular standard build order for. However, I feel that if you want to play safe, this is probably the best build order to go for. So we're going to be going over this Night Elf build order standard style. And I'm not going to do too much Ancient of the War creeping abuse because, again, this is the map Twisted Meadows. But if I got the map Echo Isles or, you know, Tyrannistan, my creeping patterns would be different, and I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I want to try to keep the AoW creeping to a minimum because it's not always a guaranteed thing. On Twisted Meadows, you're very luxuriously rewarded as a Night Elf player because you can take on the Mercenary Camp and you get 16 levels worth of creeps there to kill more or less at the start of the game. And you've got access to mercenaries such as the Shadow Troll Priest and the Berserkers slightly later on. But I do this creep camp because I feel this is a more average representation of all of the maps which you would probably AoW creep, Ancient of War creep by the way, at the start of the game. And generally you would probably put the Ancient of War down, root it down, and then build a few archers and then not use them again until a bit later on where you can creep once more with it. So with that said, let's get cracking with this, and hopefully this will give you a rough idea on what to do. So let's go. We have 4 wisps going into the mine. One of those wisps is pulled to build an altar of elders. Now, what you notice here is before my Moonwell comes up, well, basically the next wisp to come out that is built from your Tree of Life, the first one, was going to build a Moonwell. But before the Moonwell goes down, you want to pull a wisp from your gold mine towards the area where you are going to place it and build an Ancient of War. So, for example, I'm going to put an Ancient of War here, as this is an average representation of creeps across all maps. So for example, Turtle Rock, there's not many exploits you can use for AoW creeping, as I like to call it. You can pretty much just take on the turtles, and that's roughly about it. There is a bit at the top right where you can take on the shop, but again, the maps make things so complicated that I want to try to keep it down to a minimum. I'll just show you the basics. So AoW creeping, I'll show you the very basics, and then that's it, and you can practice your heart's content from there on in future, you know, in future. So with that said, again, this is, I can't wait to get through to the other replays because this is a nightmare. It really has been hard work trying to get the actual proper build order for Night Elf, and I wouldn't exactly call this it, but I'd say this is a good bet if you're an average player or are new to the game. Then you will do well by following this. Okay, and if you don't want to follow this, then feel free to follow all the other replays afterwards, because those are actually by people that are genuinely very good. So we've got a Wisp here. He's making his way to the Ancient of War placement. This Wisp that's built from your Tree of Life is going to build a Moonwell. Then your next Wisp is going to be rallied to your gold mine. Meanwhile, this Wisp is finding his way to put down an Ancient of War nearby the creep camp. Bear in mind that if you are going to put an Ancient of War by, say, a gold mine, the creeps have a much larger radius of eyesight for you. Basically, you need to build it much further away from gold mines, otherwise they will attack it. But most creeps that are sort of not near a gold mine will allow an Ancient of War to be built very close towards them. But you have to practice this, because sometimes you can aggravate them and that'll pretty much lose you the game right away. Okay, so you're going to fill up your gold mine basically with Wisps. And then after that, you're going to start filling up the trees with wood Wisps. So, Wisp to woods. You're going to pick a Demon Hunter. If you're against human, you might want to go Warden. Otherwise, you'll typically go Demon Hunter as your first hero. Now, this doesn't include a build for a late hero. No, not so much a late hero, a tavern hero. And that's the reason why I've done that, is because I'm going to be covering a lot of the Night Elf aspects in the future replays on this video. So there will be a replay that shows a Night Elf player going Beastmaster first. So I will show you what he does when he does that. So let's continue. We've got Wisps still going to wood. Once you're at 15 out of 20 food, start sending your Wisps down to your Ancient of War. Again, on maps like Turtle Rock, you won't need Wisps to repair the Ancient of War whilst it's creeping. On maps like this, you'll probably want 2 Wisps to repair. If you had an Ancient of War here and you were creeping this spot, you'd probably want 3 Wisps. So it varies so much, which is why, again, it's so difficult to come up with an absolutely solid strat that covers all bases as a Night Elf player. So you're going to build an an Archer as soon as your Ancient of War is up, and you're going to continue to rally another Wisp. As soon as you've got that Archer going, you're going to get yourself a Moonwell at 18 out of 20 food. So Archer comes out. Let's have a look at this. Now your next Wisp, although it's probably easier to pull a Wisp from your wood, that is currently doing, it is to scout for your opponent where he might be. But I use the Wisp that comes out of my next Tree of Life, 19 out of 20 for that. Archer is going to pull this creep camp and then run away immediately, pulling it towards the Ancient of War. And then what you do is you uproot the Ancient of War as the mobs approach it, because this way all the mobs are going to be right next to it, and he aggroes the mobs as soon as he is in basically how do I say it, mobile mode, aka he can move around. Whilst he's rooted to the ground, he is not a threat to these guys. They don't see him as a threat. And you watch, as soon as he's uprooted, they will stop and start attacking him. Now the reason why you don't want to uproot him straight away is because you're going to have these 2 guys at the back consistently attacking him with range attacks, and he's going to take a while to walk over there. So that's just basically explaining that. You're going to go up to 21 food with Wisps. So basically, I think it's 8 Wisps, 9 Wisps I think I go for, which is a very generous amount of Wisps, but it will cover you for future scouting should you wish to use the Wisps for that, and you're going to lose wood whilst doing that, or you know, you're going to always need those Wisps for buildings anyway later on. So here we go, he's going to uproot. Boom, he's suddenly very active, and all of them are right next to him, so he's got a minimum distance to go to them. Now you can hit and run whilst you're going to eat a tree if you want to get maximum damage out, and bring your 2 Wisps to repair. Your Demon Hunter's going to come in here, and you want your Demon Hunter or your Archer, basically an actual unit, not a building, to get the last hit on any creeps you are killing. Because if the building, the Ancient of War, gets the last hit, you will not get the experience. So make sure you get the last hit. Okay, so not much else to notice. Scout him, creep in this. So this is a realistic creep camp that you will be doing on any sort of map. A nice average, I'd say. So don't last hit. Send your Ancient of War to attack the next unit. Pick up the items straight away. And then start finishing off the rest of the creeps. As you can see, I've gone to 21 out of 30 food, because I've got that next Wisp coming out. This Wisp is continuing to scout. It might want to sit over here and check if the human's going to fast expand or just continue to scout. It really doesn't. It's up to you how you want to play it and on the map. So this Ancient of War isn't going to get a last hit. He's going to go and eat a tree and then root down onto the ground. The Wisps, their work is done. He's going to pretty much get all of his health back from eating that tree, more or less. Now we can see that is the last Wisp I choose to build. I'm going to continue to creep wherever possible. And I'm going to get myself another Archer. And then Tech as soon as wood allows. And then I'll build another Archer after that. So 21 food. You've got of Wisps and Archers basically. Then you go up to 23 food. Tech. And then you get 25 out of 30 food. So I sit with 3 Archers. That's personally how I like to do it. But you can go up to 4 or 5. Again, watch the future. Watch the rest of this video if you want to see other ways on how to do it. But I like 3 Archers because it means I can get more at tier 2. Because that's essentially what I'm doing. I'm roughly fast teching. And a good Night Elf player will consistently keep using the Ancient of War to creep. So you would probably uproot the Ancient of War and start creeping over here. But once again, I didn't want to do that too much in this game because I didn't feel like it would be a fair representation because not all maps will allow you to do this. So whilst you've got 25 out of 30 food, your next objective will be to get 2 Moonwells as soon as Golden would allow. Once you've done that, your Demon Hunter will want to be sitting next to a Goblin Merchant if the map has one, which it probably will do in 1 versus 1 maps. Boots of Speed, you want to pick this up. 250 gold as soon as you can. So you get 2 Moonwells after your tech. You got 3 Archers. You pick up a Boots of Speed as soon as you can. And then, yeah, most Night Elf players, especially with a Demon Hunter, will be quite aggressive to their opponent, depending on what race they are and what unit composition they have. Now, this is a frisky computer normal, and I have a lot of fun toying with him, and I probably overdo it, which makes my build suffer a little bit. But I'm going to go over everything you need to do anyway, pretty much. Then your next objective, whilst you're harassing or continuing to creep, depends on the map and what your situation is right now. For me, it's more convenient just to attack my opponent, because I know I'm going to get away with it. Is you're going to get yourself a Hunter's Hall as soon as Golden Wood allows. So that should be covered in a moment once I've finished having fun with him. As you can see, it makes my build slack a little bit. I'm waiting for that to go down. It will go down. I'm just too busy having fun microing here. There we go. Hunter's Hall is being built, but obviously build that as soon as you can. So don't take this replay necessarily exactly right, at least macro-wise, because I do slack a bit macro-wise. Then I like to build a shop, so I have it ready for tier 2, so I can get Staff of Preservation, should I feel it necessary. If you think you can get away without getting it straight away, then don't, because you basically can get your Ancients of Lore quicker. Again, this is very dependent on the map and your situation and where you are sitting at. Yeah, see, I'm pushing my luck like mad. Hunter's Hall, as you can see, I've got a lot of resources. So one thing you want to bear in mind is that when you're nearly tier 2, you want to have some sort of access to the tavern, because you almost definitely will be getting your second hero from the tavern. Almost all Night Elf players will do. So that might be a Panda or a Beastmaster or a Naga Sea Witch. It's really up to you, depending on the unit composition you are facing against. I picked the Panda because I think he is a nice solid hero. So let's continue. I really do go overboard with this, but now's a good time to back off. Send my Archer over here to pick up a Panda. And there we go. So, like I say, I'm going to correct myself. What I would have done is I would have built a shop at this point. So you build a Hunter's Hall, then a shop. But like I say, my macro slacks. So I apologise for that, but I will try to explain everything as best as possible. I'm going to continue to push my luck as much as I'd like to go back and just relax. I really shouldn't have let myself get too distracted, but anyway, as soon as your tech is finished at tier 2, you pick up a Panda or a Beastmaster, etc., and you put down 2 Ancients of Lore. You want those going down. Those are your standards, basically. If you're against Orc, you're going to go 2 Ancients of Wind. But Ancients of Law are basically a good cover versus almost all races. Versus Night Elf, you might get Ancients of Wind as well. But like I say, this is your bog standard. Your safest bet is Ancient of Law. It will provide you with Dryads and Bears. There is the very, very late Ancient of Wonders. So once I've got 2 Ancients of Law down, and I would have had a shop up by this point, I'm going to build 2 extra Wisps. So you can see I'm sitting at 29 out of 50 food with like all the buildings that need to be built at this point. Looking quite comfortable indeed. And then I'm going to tech. So I've got those 2 Ancients of Law going down. I've built 2 extra Wisps with my tier 2 tree. And then I'm going to tech towards tier 3. Now, if everything's going well for you, and maybe you might have sold some items. I didn't sell any items because I didn't want to skew the results. But in an ideal situation, you would have had quite a few items at this point that perhaps you could have sold. So it'll give you a bit of additional gold to actually build these buildings and tech up quicker and easier. So 2 Ancients of Law are going to provide me with 2 Dryads very shortly. If I can stop bothering with the micro. Here we go. There we are. 2 Dryads. Oh my goodness, this poor computer. It's having a rough time. So there we go. 2 Dryads are coming out. I'm going to concentrate on this now. So I'm aiming for 3 Dryads. So you're going to get 2 Dryads from 1 Ancient of Law and 1 Dryad from the other. And then the one that builds only 1 Dryad is going to build a bear, a Druid of the Claw next. This is why, I mean, if you really want, you can watch the replay for this and just watch me having fun with the micro, but that's really makes my macro slack. I haven't quite got the knack of that. So you get your 3 Dryads, and then you're going to continue building bears up until 50 food. I think that Mountain King might be going down again. Oh my, yes, there he goes. So if you haven't lost any units, you're going to have 3 Archers, 3 Dryads, a Bear's coming up, he's going to heal me, and then you're going to have 2 more Bears. So as soon as you're at 46 out of 50 food, you're going to start researching Druid of the Claw Adept training. So you're going to have at least 1 Bear out, and then you're going to research Druid of the Claw Adept training. And then your tier 3 should be pretty much finished by the time your Druid of the Claw Adept training is done. I'm just going to watch a lot of this because this is fun to watch, to be honest. It was fun to do. That Demon Hunter really wanted to die. And then all the militia come in. This gets overcomplicated. But okay, I'm going to pause it again, come back up here, and we're going to have a look at this Ancient of Law, or at least have that targeted. Because that should be getting master training any second now, hopefully. So, in a bit of a tricky predicament. Just trying to pull them back. Oh dear. So yes, you want Ancient Master Training ASAP. Again, I've slacked. You can see I've got resources here that have gone up over 0 and 0, which means that I've slacked. But that's the point, really. Is you're going up to 50 food. You're going to have Master Bears pretty shortly. So you're going to have 3 Archers, 3 Dryads, 3 Bears, double hero. You can go a 3rd hero, but you'd have to sacrifice some units. But that, again, this is all your choice, how you want to play it. Up to you. Master training almost finished, and then I'm going to go back to my base and just keep an eye on what I do macro-wise from there on. I think I just demonstrate what you might do past that point. So, yep, there we go. Research complete. So it isn't a bad idea to be aggressive against your opponent at this point, because you're pretty much as strong as you're going to be. You're at food capped, and you've got Master Bears. You are at like maximum strength at this point for this time in the game. Once I've got 50 out of 50, I start to get the lesser upgrades. Abolish Magic. You can always get this earlier if you're facing against a lot of summoned units like Water Elementals. And I like to get Mark of the Claw because it just makes it a lot more comfortable to get the Druids to keep that roar up, because you want the roar up most of the time when you're fighting, because it gives you a large bonus, and if you've got 50 out of 50 or more units, then you're going to benefit from it quite largely. So this is also to demonstrate to you at this point. Now you've got 50 out of 50. You'll get 1 attack in Strength of the Wild, so that's basically Dryad and Druid of the Claw attack damage. So you'll put 1 point of research into that. Then you'll get Ultra Vision, and then you'll get Wellspring. You might have got Ultra Vision before this point, really, but you don't particularly need it. Because if you do it this way, Strength of the Wild, Ultra Vision, and Wellspring will be researched in time for night time. But my macro slacked a little bit, so you really should be researching that probably about 30 seconds ago or so. But like I say, this is roughly about what you would be doing as a Night Elf player if you were playing it standard and safe, or as an average player. I'm going to get myself another Moonwell, because this is just explaining what you can possibly do. You can either get another Moonwell and just stick to Ancient of Lore units, or I have seen in replays, players go up to 60 food, so they'll be at 59, 49, or you can always rebuild Wisps, which I suggest you do if you do get an Ancient of Wind. It's up to you. And yes, once you're tier 3, and when it's convenient, you might want to get Ancient of Wind for Talons, or possibly Fairy Dragons. But the main thing you definitely want to do, don't worry about this Ancient of Wind unless you feel it's necessary for fighting your opponent. If you think you can get units from it, that will help you fight versus the enemy unit composition. But it's just an option. And it's nice to have, really, to fall back on. So really what you definitely want to do when you are tier 3 is get yourself a second Staff of Preservation. I never got the first one because I never went back to base, but you would ideally already have a Staff of Preservation on your Demon Hunter at this point, and then when you do come back again, you should have enough resources at tier 3 at some point in the game to get another one for your Panda. It is a very good item, Staff of Preservation. It will help you save your bears. It's 150 gold. Your bears cost 255 gold and 60 wood, I think. So if you use it on a bear, it teleports it back to your main Tree of Eternity, and it saves its life essentially. So you're going to already pay for you're going to pay for that unit, pay for the item, if you use it on like even a Dryad or more, because even the Dryads are like the same cost, if not a little bit more, if you count wood. And the definite thing you really want, versus almost all races, but it's always worth probably getting, is the Orb of Venom on the Demon Hunter. He's got a very fast attack, and this will allow you to deal with enemy air units as well. And you can always spread his damage because it's a dot, it's a damage over time. So if you really want maximum damage, you can always hit each one of the enemy's units once, but of course that depends on the situation. Maybe you just want a hero focus or unit focus, but there's the option. So as you can see, all the texts are going through. Like I say, if I was a bit quicker, then I would have had these pretty much researched by the time night time comes. But they do research quite quickly. So boom, here you want both of these researches done. Wellspring's a little bit late. And you can see, get Fairy Dragons or Talons, or you can get yourself, you know, Dryads or more bears. The choice is yours once you get that kind of 50 food unit composition. 3 bears, 3 Dryads, 3 archers, double hero. That's how I like to do it. But it's totally up to you. It is very flexible. Night Elf are incredibly flexible and a very reactive race. And I think I might have mentioned it, but I might mention it one more time, is that I did definitely struggle to come up with an average sort of build order for this. Bearing in mind all the Ancient of War creeping you can do, which is why I didn't do too much of it, because not every map is going to allow you to do that, which is why I didn't cover it. I covered it for the first bit, which you will almost always be doing as a Night Elf player. Although I will say, if you think your opponent is going to be highly aggressive at the start, and you've already built that Ancient of War next to a creep camp, you can always uproot it and pull it back to your base and then start spam building archers. You don't have to Ancient of War creep, and you might not have the luxury of doing it if your opponent is coming to tower rush you or be very aggressive. So consider that, okay? But generally you are always going to start off with Ancient of War creeping, and ideally you're going to continue to do it when possible. If there's moments for you to step back after harassing your opponent and you've still got those few archers, you can bring the Ancient of War towards that mercenary camp and start creeping that. In an ideal world. So thank you very much for watching this standard build order. I will now start going through all of the replays, and I will be going through them very quickly, as I say, because time is an issue. And if you wanted to see those replays properly, once again you can download those in the brief description. It will take you to a link to replayers.com, and you can download the replay and watch it at your own leisure. So the first one I will be covering will be a Night Elf versus Human, and it will be Warders and Archers versus Tower Pressure. So that's the scenario we'll be looking at next. Hello, welcome to our first game, which is Night Elf versus Human. As I mentioned before, I am going to be speed running through these, so probably roughly about 4 to 5 speed. And the idea is just to generally show you what's going on. If you want to see the exact build orders for these, like I say, I suggest you check out the replay, and that way you can watch it at your own leisure. But I'm generally going to give you the idea of what these Night Elf players are doing and on what maps and what scenarios. So this is a Warden versus a Human player. So Warden is a very typical hero. He's going to try to Ancient of War creep at the start. It's a difficult creep camp to do, but he's going to have to pull back now because his opponent is coming in with a tower rush alongside the Archmage, Water Elementals and Footmen. This is a hell of a lot of pressure. So when you see this kind of pressure, it is smart to build another Ancient of War, and you know, it's definitely smart to have a Hunter's Hall on the way regardless, because a Hunter's Hall will grant you access to Ancient Protectors, which you will almost definitely need in a scenario like this. So as we can see, our opponent, this is quite a long distance to reach your opponent, because you can see the militia have already run out by this point, but they're still able to get to the Night Elf base despite the long distance. So they're building up towers now. This is a nightmare scenario for our Night Elf player, because the Human player is strong. He's got 2 Water Elementals, a Footman and an Archmage sitting inside of his base, and the Night Elf player, Moon, does not have much of anything else. He's had to root his tree after getting clear of the creep camp, and he's going to start spamming archers, and he's going to play it cool. Do not panic. Try to play it cool. So we're going through here. We can see he's just going to continue to spam archers, going to continue to bring them in. Use Wisps when possible if it's convenient. You don't want to lose Wisps, but if you can, try to lose them whilst detonating on an opponent. He gets the heal there. He's going to try to do any damage he can do to the towers. The archers do piercing damage, which do extra damage to towers that are currently upgrading. So this is very useful to have a whole ton of archers out, but you've got to try to avoid any damage you take in from the Footman and the Archmage, and possibly Water Elementals when they're out. Archmage is currently out of mana, so he won't be able to get any Water Elementals, and you can see that a decent chunk of archers have come out now. Moon didn't panic. He didn't bring his Ancient of War over here to try to deal with this. He's continuing to use his archers and micro as best as possible to get the most bang for his buck. None of the towers have actually gone up yet at this point. He's still got this under control. He's still taking control of the units, and he's going to bring down the tower in a moment before it upgrades. It takes about 50 seconds to a minute for a tower to upgrade. A good way to look at it is imagine that you've seen a tower start upgrading. It's been built, it's a scout tower, it's just started upgrading. A good way to look at it is you see what the time is now. You've got 4 circles. A tower will typically take, a minute will typically be 2 circles on your time clock at the top here. So that's just a rough guide. So if you see this, look at this time. Imagine a tower's going up. I know that by the time it gets to 6 circles all the way through, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over here, my opponent's tower will be basically finished upgrading. So you've kind of got that as a clue as to when you need to actually focus that tower. Otherwise, concentrate on dealing with the units if possible. If they are a threat, otherwise definitely go for the tower. So here we go. He's just pushing back the Human player, forcing those peasants to die, and he's done a great job. Now, that isn't the end of it. It's quite amazing how long this goes on for. He comes back to creeping, which he would do logically, but apparently his Human opponent seems quite adamant on continuing to put pressure on. So this is why I'm called this Warden and Archers versus Human tower pressure, essentially. So he's just consistently creeping, trying to deal with this Archmage harass all the time. He's got a late tech because he's had to. A Shredder's been built by Foe, and I like calling him Foe. I know he goes by other names, but I like to call him Foe. So anyway, Foe's got a Shredder just to add to the damage potential, because you can always repair with worker units. And I believe that later on we will see Moon responding in kind. And they also, Shredders are amazing units here versus the Archers. So this is again, nightmare situation. He's actually managed to clear this camp more or less and get himself that expansion, which he really, really wanted despite all of the pressure, which I'm not sure if that was necessarily the right move. But again, I'm not a pro like Moon, so I can't tell you for sure. You can see a Shredder's being picked up. So use your surroundings, use your environment. If you've got access to a Goblin laboratory, and I believe he might have possibly, I don't think he got it from here, because I've never seen this creep camp being pulled. So he might have had a Wisp all the way up here. Get a Shredder. I don't know how he did it, but he gets the Shredder anyway at some point. So just bear that in mind, that you can always use Mercenaries or the Goblin Laboratory. Again, take down the guard towers when possible. Warden is getting stronger and stronger. Typically, Night Elf players will go solo Warden, but they can always get a second hero. But solo Warden isn't that unexpected as a Night Elf player. We can see that Ancient Protectors have been built thanks to the Hunter's Hall. I wonder if that Hunter's Hall got cancelled and got rebuilt, because I feel like it's in a different position. Either way, we've got another Shredder coming in here for foe. It's a fantastic game. Shadow Strike and Blink are basically the reasons why you go Warden versus Human, because humans almost always go Archmage, and it's very hard for a human to deal with. We can see that this expansion isn't really going to get much out of it, and Moon has actually had to let it go and fall back once more. And just in case you thought, oh, okay, that's it pretty much now, it's going to calm down. I think there's one last ditch attempt at pretty much trying to tower rush. So we can see the Warden has been creeping, getting strong, level 5, getting experience for killing enemy units. Bear that in mind. You want to try to bring down any enemy units as possible. If you know that you're very close to getting level 6, it's well worth it, because that level 6 Warden ability, Avatar, is insane. We've got the Wisps blocking off here. Trying to keep that Shredder going for as long as possible. More towers coming up here. Another Shredder for foe. Archers sitting at the back. The Ancient Protectors doing their job. Dryads being used. Dryads are useful for slowing units and just being quite useful ranged units overall. Warden is now level 6 after the amount of kills, and that is pretty much the GG point there. Despite the towers about to go up, foe has come to an end because he's lost his Archmage, and there is a level 6 Warden. So a rough guide on how to deal versus human pressure is essentially to play it cool, build another Ancient of War in your base if you need to, get as many archers as you can, bring down the towers whilst they're upgrading when possible, take out the peasants if you can, otherwise pick off the army when convenient, the footmen, because you don't want too many of them running around, otherwise your archers won't be able to sit still and attack when there's too many footmen sitting on them. So you've got to keep a decent balance. It's very hard to do, but this will give you a rough idea on how to achieve that balance. Now the next replay I will be going over will be Demon Hunter, Panda and Dryads versus Tower and Rifle Pressure. So it'll be a similar game, however it's using the heroes Demon Hunter and Panda instead of Warden. So what would you do in that scenario? Let's have a look. Hello, welcome to our second Night Elf versus Human game. And in this one, we see close quarters, close positions between our human player and our Night Elf player. Our Night Elf player is doing the altar, then, you know, the Moonwell and the Ancient of War. And he's going to creep this camp. As I've mentioned before, you get different creep camps potentially from your Ancient of War. Some of them not so many, some of them not so good. Some of them really high level. The total levels you get out of this is basically 6, whereas on Twisted Meadows, if you did the mercenary camp, you'll get 16 levels, as I mentioned previously. So we're just going to see how this plays out. Our Night Elf player is just going to play it cool. He's doing the standard build, as you can see. Second Moonwell at 18 food. Just continue to build Wisps, getting the Archer out, getting ready to Ancient of War creep. But he's not going to be able to do it because his opponent is being super aggressive. Even with those militia, he can bring down the currently building Moonwell, which is going to hurt a little bit because you kind of want that Moonwell up by this point. Especially if your opponent is about to be aggressive, which he will. As we can see, he's going to take out another Moonwell. This is really quite a horrible situation. But very smart by our Night Elf player. Now this is something you always want to bear in mind. It's very hard to actually pull off, unless you're very, very good and used to doing it. Is try not to spec into an ability until you know that you need it. So for example, if you were going to creep this camp, you don't need Mana Burn. I will probably pick Mana Burn because I'm lazy and I know I'm going to be using it. But if I got rushed here, I would be screwed because Mana Burn, whilst useful for the versus the Archmage, the Immolation is going to be much more useful in this situation, and we will see how that plays out, just how much more useful Immolation plays out in this game. So he's pushing off his own opponent, but his opponent's probably going to end up coming back again in a moment. He's quite calm. It's not too bad. Few archers out. Slow and steady. You can see the Ancient of War, the second one, has been built because that's a response to being pressured early on. Our human player is just basically starting to creep now. So it's not like a super heavy tower rush at the start, but there is a lot of pressure consistently from the human player as the game progresses. Needless to say, our Night Elf friend here does get to do quite a bit of damage in the human base to punish him for his early aggression. But here we go again. He's ready to come and attack. We've got another Ancient of War up. He's just continuously damaging this farm. Got to try to micro those Wisps when possible. If they get attacked, throw them into the gold mine, the injured ones. See a Hunter's Hall at the back here is probably going to be possibly... No, it won't be taken down. Thank goodness for that, because you really want that Hunter's Hall up. You don't want that being delayed, especially when you hit Tier 2, because Tier 2 means you can get a second hero, and of course those Ancients of Lore. You can see our human player has picked up a Naga Sea Witch. He's going to heal up. He's going to start going rifles by the looks of it. And he's going to focus on that more heavily because our Night Elf friend here is going to go super, super heavy. This is what I was talking about as well. You can use the Ancient of War for additional creeping later on. So that's what you would have done. You would have crept your first point and then you probably move him and creep with him again when the coast is clear. When it's convenient for you to creep again with that Ancient of War, try to do it because they are very good, as you can see. Always try to Ancient of War creep when convenient because they do all the tanking and it basically allows you to creep stuff that you shouldn't really be able to creep at this point. So our human player is very calm and collect at the moment, but it will get quite chaotic soon. We've got the Demon Hunter, we've got the Panda, we've got a few Archers, and now we're just going to see Dryad spam from our Night Elf friend as the human player is pretty much ready at this point. He's 48 out of 48 food. He's got a decent mix of rifles, got some casters, a few melee units, melee, should I say. I am getting into the habit of saying that right. And he's going to start putting some pressure in. The Water Elementals are nasty. Dryads are very vulnerable units generally against this composition, such as rifles, but they are good against Water Elementals. Now, here can come a lot of Militia, which are really, really difficult to deal with, especially if you're this Night Elf player. But Immolation is really doing more than it looks like it's doing. It is very, very strong. Good items as well. I believe that was probably a big healing pot or something like that, but you definitely want that in this scenario. Again, you can see this Demon Hunter is just consistently trying, when convenient and possible, to hug enemy units and use that immolation. But he's had to back off here, otherwise he would have got killed. Archer's going to have to pull back into the base. We've got an Ancient Protector here, just trying to deal with the harass, because again, our opponent's being very aggressive, so it's probably a smart idea to get an Ancient Protector in a safe spot as well. They are quite... vulnerable sometimes, so you don't want to build them out here. Just have them so they're conveniently placed inside of your base. Another, again, Ancient of War is a very useful building to have, just running amok whilst you're consistently spamming out the Dryads. So you can see the resources wouldn't allow units, archers, consistently from this Ancient of War, so it's quite good to have him up and running and doing damage. Panda is just good AoE damage, and so is the Demon Hunter. He's just getting stronger and stronger. Dryads are still spamming out, and you're thinking, why Dryads? But because rifles, especially with some attack damage upgrades, are quite good. But the Dryads are necessary because they will probably cancel out the slow if they do have Abolish Magic, which I don't think they do at this point, because we can still see that Demon Hunter running around with slow. But if you can get Abolish Magic, then do so. And this is pretty much this point of this video, is it's just another way to deal with early pressure if you are different hero combinations such as Demon Hunter and Panda. You can see how he plays, so it's not always just a macro thing such as the units that have been built. Dryads were very useful here. It's a micro thing as well. Pay attention to what the players are doing and how they do it, and it will give you an inclination if you are an aspiring Night Elf player as to how you should perform. Because I can't tell you everything, but I can show you these replays, which will pretty much give you a good inclination of what it is you need to be doing. I hope you're not getting too sick from this. I'm literally like physically sick from watching everything moving at a million miles an hour. But like I say, I need to keep the pace going. So you can see we're still under a lot of pressure as our Night Elf player. He's started moving on to bears now that he's got up to Tree of Eternity, because he's going to want those bears in order to be able to push back onto the human. Dryads are good, but they're not going to take you all the way, or they might do if your opponent lets you, but realistically you're going to want to try to push towards bears, because as soon as he does get bears, he's got a lot more presence in these battles. So we can see our opponent is again so aggressive, so in your face. Night Elf is going to return back here. He's got his bears, he's got his Dryads. He's going to make the most use of this Demon Hunter and Panda when possible. Invulnerability pot allows the Demon Hunter to run amok essentially. Do want to see a bit more immolation when convenient. So still, again, you think the human player has this because he's just consistently looking like he's on top of things. But our Night Elf player has played very smart and done the best he can do using consistent staff of preservation. You know, using that over and over when possible to save anything he can. And at this point, he's getting so strong with his heroes that they will pretty much carry him through, and that's pretty much what's going to happen soon. Loses the Panda, but he's still okay. The Demon Hunter is very strong, and he's going heavily on our enemy. He's now having to back off here. It's consistently back and forth, isn't it? It's crazy. But we will come to an end soon, and we can see that our opponent, our fragile human Archmage opponent, does fall towards the Demon Hunter. I believe there was a mistake there. He probably intended to take a pot. But I feel that this is, again, a replay that shows you how to handle situations. You know, it is very favoured for human, and you probably will lose to this if you are facing this as an average player. But it gives you an idea on what you need to do, and that's the whole point of these replays. Next one will be Night Elf versus Human again. But this is a build I wanted to cover that I didn't cover in my original standard build order because I can't because again the video is going to be so long. Is Beastmaster, Archers, Hunts, Mercs Abuse whilst expanding versus Humans. So can you guess who the player is for that? It's going to be Moon, and he is crazy as a Night Elf player, an awesome Night Elf player, and we're going to get to watch that in a moment. Hey there, so we have our game of Moon versus Reprisal, Night Elf versus Human. This build order is when you go Tavern hero first, so Beastmaster for example. So you're going to start off, and I'm just copying Moon here. This is what he's done. So you're going to start off putting your first Wisp onto wood and the remaining 4 into the gold mine. The first Wisp to be built from the Tree of Life looks like it's going to put down as an Ancient of War to creep by the mercenary camp because this is Twisted Meadows. Again, the map might differ how you do things, but essentially you're going 1 Wisp onto wood, and then by the looks of it, by the time you've built your second Wisp that comes out, gets a Moonwell, you're going to go back onto the gold mine, and then you're going to start putting Wisps onto wood. Again, you can watch this replay properly if you wish to get the build order exactly. I'm not going to be able to cover it just quite precisely, but you're getting the idea, rough idea. Altar of Elders goes down about 11:45 time of day, so 4 circles through daytime. This will allow you to get the hero at the same time that it is allowed at the tavern. Basically, as soon as the heroes are available. So another Moonwell being produced. That's the second Moonwell. It goes up a bit quicker because we've got more resources because we didn't build that Altar of Elders straight away. I say we, I mean Moon really. And he's going to build quite a few archers. He's not going to creep this camp straight away, I believe. He goes for like 3 archers. We see our human player is typically taking this Goblin laboratory camp, which he will do. And we're going to get... I keep saying we're. Moon's going to get ready to get himself a Panda. He's got 2 archers, a 3rd one getting ready to come out. 2 Moonwells. Altar is finished now, so we're probably going to see the Beastmaster. He's going to select Quill Beast, which is pretty much where you always go first as a Beastmaster, depending on what you're against. But generally, you will be focusing on Quill Beast and then Thunderhawk. Otherwise, sometimes you might just go Quill Beast and Bears. I can't remember why you go Bears. It's first is Farseer, I think, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, we got 3 archers. Ancient of War is ready to uproot. Quill Beast activates the creep camp, and our Beastmaster is going to proceed to creep this stuff very comfortably with a nice arranged army. And he's picked up some lovely items there. He's getting himself a 3rd Moonwell. Now, Moon is typically, and again, you can pick up a Shadow Troll Priest if you've got access to the mercenary camp and you do a build like this. You almost always do want to get the Shadow Troll Priest because he's a very strong unit to have at the very start of the game to heal you up, allow you to creep further, give you, you know, additional strength in fights versus your opponent. Now, Moon's a player that likes to build stuff in random places. He's got a Hunter's Hall, so he is going for a Hunter's Hall, but he's built it down here. There's no real specific reason why you definitely need to do that, apart from, you know, fooling your opponent into not being sure what it is you're doing. All the while, I missed this point out, is he actually built another Ancient of War up here, because he knew that by the time that Ancient of War was built, he would have finished his creep camp and he can move over and creep this point. So this is another thing Night Elf players will do a lot, is they will build more than one Ancient of War, and that's pretty much purely for the purpose of just creeping mercenary camps and other decent spots to get access to awesome items and things and goodies. So again, he hasn't teched. We're not seeing a tech. In fact, what we're going to see is a Tree of Life in a moment, I believe. Not just yet, but I believe he does go for that. So we've got lots of Mercs. This is heavy Merc abuse. 2 Troll Berserkers, 2 Shadow Troll Priests. They have abolished magic. They're good versus the Archmage. And he's got a handful of Archers alongside the Quill Beast, which are just doing decent harass here. Very decent harass against the consistently building Peasants. So our Footman just being a pest in the Night Elf base, but not a big deal. Huntress sitting here chilling out. So Moon also likes to switch towards Huntresses at this point, which is something you would probably be doing realistically. So again, he can still use these Ancients of War. And this is how he plays. He sits at tier 1 for a long time, and he'll go towards like mass Mercs. So he's going to have Archers, Mercs, and Huntresses. And he's going to put heavy pressure. Of course, this is against a human player. He might play differently against other races. Bear that in mind. But this is what he's doing in this current situation, is he is very, very aggressive. Now, I'm expecting that Tree of Life to be built any moment. There we go. So he waits a while. It looks like he's going to wait until almost daytime is up. He starts his Tree of Life. So he's doing lots and lots of harass. He's building up. He's got a strong army force. He's 44 food. But at the same time, whilst all of this is going on, he's creeping his enemy's area. And he's got a Tree of Life. So this is how you're playing. He still hasn't teched to tier 2. So if you're doing this type of build, exactly how Moon's doing it, you're probably not going to be teching to tier 2 because you're not too focused on the tier 2 units just yet. You're really concentrating on those Huntresses and Mercs, which is where all your resources are going. He did actually tech up there, but I think he cancelled it because of the pressure he was receiving. So again, he probably thought it was necessary to just cancel the tech and concentrate on those tier 1 units once again because he knows what he's doing. Now he does a lot of damage here in his human base. I mean, this is aggressive. He's against towers in a human base with militia, and he's still just playing like a boss, optimizing maximum use out of the Goblin Zeppelin, saving units, pulling them back, getting as much use out of them as he can. This is just incredible. He's my favorite player, I reckon. Next to Grubby, you know, Night Elf and Orc. You can't really go too far wrong. Those two players are insane to watch. Tree of Life is sitting here ready. He is just going to sit here for as long as he can, and then very cleverly, he's going to TP out, but he's not going to TP to his main base. He's actually going to TP to his expansion, so that once again, he's min-maxing. He's being super efficient. He's going to start creeping. And boom, he's going to secure himself an expansion whilst all of this is gone. He's still got all of those units, and our tier 2 is almost done now. So he's still got access to Merc camps if he wishes. He's still got the Ancient of Wars to build. He's got that expansion going down. I believe his Beastmaster has been harassing the whole time whilst he was just creeping with those units. So he could always come over here and pick these units up. He's got himself a Shredder, which who doesn't like a Shredder? I'm not entirely sure why. Oh, I know why actually. I remember now. This was, again, he is an amazing player. He's like just thinking ahead so much. So advanced. You know why he got this Goblin Shredder? You're like, hang on a sec, he's got 1600 wood. I'll tell you why. Because he knows he was doing so much harass. His opponent spent so much wood on towers and all of this. He is absolutely starved for wood. So what does he do? He gets a Shredder. And this denies reprisal from getting a Shredder himself to try to get himself back in the game. Because he's kind of okay for gold. He's got an expansion. But he's going to suffer for wood. Especially with all the harass. So Moon's so clever getting that Goblin Shredder. Just denying his opponent. He's not using it for anything particular. Like for battles or for, you know, getting wood himself. It's just to deny your opponent's tech and your future buildings. Oh, it's just insane to watch. It's really, really good. But as you can see, this is technically the build that you would be doing if you were going Night Elf and going Tavern Hero and very heavy on tier 1 and mass Mercs and Hunts. He is going to get tier 2 though. He has got it. And he's going to keep this expansion, I believe. His human opponent is just battered and he's consistently coming in here. Beastmaster. Invisibility potion taken. What is he going to do? Is he going to use it here? Oh my goodness, I think he's going to do it here. This is insane. You've got to watch these replays. He casts, gets his abilities going. So he's got these units in here to do some damage, and then he starts doing Stampede. So you do it in the opposite direction. So a lot of players might think you do it towards the way you want to face, towards the base that you're facing your opponent. If you do it away from them, your units, the Stampedes are going to come in this direction. So they're going to hit this stuff first. Whereas if you did it that way, they're going to take ages to get there. So this is the way to do it. Exactly how he's doing it. Look at the damage he's doing. So all the while this is going on, he's got his second hero, Panda, and all those units are going to either continue to creep or harass his opponent. It's just insane. The level of play is just beyond believable. Again, he's picked up a Goblin Zeppelin as well. Just in case he needs to pull the Beastmaster out, he's always thinking ahead. Now, something he definitely does here as well is I'm just going to put speed to this point. You'll get a Tree of Life here, I think, because he goes for multiple expands, because that's pretty much the way he likes to play. He's very sort of aggressive. He masses units, but he's consistently getting expansion. Oh, he already did it. He already did it. I'm behind. He already did it. He built this Tree of Life here. So Fog of War wise, if an opponent is running around, they can't actually see up the ramp, so they couldn't see the Tree of Life there. And most of the time, your opponent isn't going to be scouting this sort of area, especially at this point in the at this point in the game. You know, like after the 12-minute mark, or even around that mark. So it can't be seen, and then he just takes another expansion. So it's highly aggressive, lots of Huntresses, lots of Mercs, and he goes crazy. Look at this. What Mercs has he got? He's got Maulers as well, so he's got pretty much everything he needs. His opponent's doing the best he can do with what he's been given in this game, but it's not going to be enough. This is a very, very strong Night Elf player, and absolutely a joy to watch. I highly suggest you go and download that replay and watch it yourself. I know you saw it there, but that doesn't quite do it enough justice. You need to watch it absolutely flawlessly, precisely. Right, next replay is going to be our only one versus Orc, because I would go out on a limb to say 99% of the time Night Elf versus Orc is Demon Hunter, Demon Hunter, Beastmaster, Tinker, and Mass Talons alongside a Fairy Dragon. They do that pretty much every game, so I only really need to show you one replay, I think, here, and it's a good one, so stay tuned for that. Hello, welcome to the Night Elf versus Orc game that I have for you today. So basically Demon Hunter, Beastmaster, Tinker, Talons. Lots and lots of Talons. And maybe you might want to get yourself a Fairy Dragon. Now bear in mind you can build your Ancient of War here on Turtle Rock, but if you do, you are taking a risk if you're getting very aggressively attacked by your opponent. Your Ancient of War is in a slightly bad spot. So it's slightly more rewarding to have it here, because this creep camp is more rewarding than this one. But again, you're sort of out of your way, so it's a risk you take. Bear that in mind. Demon Hunter, again, more or less standard build. Just getting the Archer first, AoW creeping, 2 Moonwells, and then you're going to get a few more Archers after that once you've crept. Demon Hunter's going to go off and probably try to harass. If not, he's going to creep. Yeah, most of the time, Demon Hunters versus Orc players, you're going to be just aggressive. You're going to be trying to find out where that Blade Master is, and you're going to try to mana burn him as much as possible. Now, this is insane, the amount of harass our Night Elf player deals with, so just pay attention to this. Now, you might have noticed there's an Ancient of Wonders there, and the way these Moonwells are built, this is what you do versus Orc. Grunts and heroes, basically, Orcs' armies aren't big enough, aren't small enough, really, to fit through this gap. All of their units are quite chunky, so if a Moonwell is slightly spaced out like this, it will stop their units from getting in. And if you have the Ancient of Wonders, which is your shop, built in the middle, your units can pass through it because it's a shop. It allows you access through. But the enemy still can't pass through it. So that's the reason why there's an Ancient of Wonders there, and you've got your buildings spread out in such a way that Orc units cannot get access into the back of your base, and therefore to the lovely, lovely Wisps. Okay, so continuing on, we can see the amount of heavy harass. Normally Orc players aren't always this aggressive versus Night Elf players, but we'll see what happens to an Orc player when he is. Our Night Elf player is very smart here, and he takes the opportunity to just soak up all those Moonwells, and then pay attention to that. The Blade Master has used Dust of Appearance twice, and he no longer he no longer has it, and it's about to run out on this archer, who can still soak up just a little bit more Moonwell juice. And this archer's going to go invisible, which is then going to block the path in. And this means that this Blade Master and Grunt are now stuck in his base. However, Gigabyte Fly does do a very smart move here, and he finishes off his Blade Master with his Grunt, denying experience to the Demon Hunter. So very smart move there from him as well, but this Grunt will die. And shot being denied once again. Quite a nuisance, but a really good job there from our Night Elf player. That's how you can handle that kind of harass, as you can see. Beastmaster's being picked up, second hero, tech is complete, and we're going to see Ancients of Wind start to be produced. Double Ancients of Wind. So you're going to be aggressive against your opponent, harassing a lot. Bear in mind that Orc, at this point in the game, love to get themselves a Bestiary and perhaps a Spirit Lodge. Almost definitely a Spirit Lodge. And if you weren't being harassed so hard at the start, so that's what took up most of his time, you'll quite realistically be inside of the Orc base beforehand, already attacking it and trying to slow down their tech, destroying the the Bestiary and the Spirit Lodge, because the longer you can deny those buildings, especially the Spirit Lodge, the better, because they need those Spirit Walkers, the Cowcasters, to come out and basically provide. That was very cheeky from the Tauren Chieftain being able to move for that. Anyway, you need the Cowcasters early as an Orc player because it gives you mana over time. So you need that mana for Disenchant, which is going to help you versus the Talons, which will basically be spamming Fairy Fire and Cyclone. So this is your build as a Night Elf player. Demon Hunter, Beastmaster, teching up. You're going to Ancient of War creep when convenient, when possible. Otherwise, I think he lost it because he got a bit overzealous, because he was basically doing so much. He ended up losing his Ancient of War whilst he was busy doing something else. But you would probably have your Ancient of War still up, but it might not necessarily be doing too much. And anyway, we're going to get to the point. You're still massing Talons. As soon as you get your first Talon out, you're going to get the Adept training. And then as soon as you've got Tree of Eternity, you're going to get yourself Master training. And then you're just going to keep spamming out Talons. Pretty much to 50 food. But don't forget to get your Tinker as your third hero. So we can see just consistently fighting. This is what happens. You will actually see Night Elf players, they'll lose quite a few units because Talons are a little bit fragile. They can be picked off. But just the idea really is just to try to keep picking off as many Orc units as possible as well, because you're going to be building up these heroes, and the stronger this tri-hero gets, the harder it is for Orc to handle it, obviously, but it is almost impossible for Orc to handle higher level tri-heroes from Night Elf, such as Demon Hunter, Beastmaster and Tinker, because the summons are just too much, and the Spirit Walkers, they have Disenchant, they can get a lot of mana eventually, but it's too much. This is a build that's so strong versus Orc because it's relentless. The amount of times you have to use Disenchant as an Orc, you will eventually run out of mana, and your Night Elf opponent with the summons and with all the Talons will just basically wear you down with Cyclone, Fairy Fire and those summons. So we can see our Night Elf player just getting very close to the cap on food, and he'd probably get a Fairy Dragon in a moment or very shortly. It's always handy to have a Fairy Dragon once you get to this kind of point, because then you can sit it in the battle and you can have it in I can't remember the name for it, but basically it's going to be anti-caster mode, and it's going to basically do some damage to the Spirit Walkers anytime they decide to disenchant or cast Spirit Link. So we can see lots and lots of Cyclone. This is what you're going to see from your Night Elf players. Just loads of Cyclone abuse. And you can basically surround a unit. So if you Cyclone a unit, then you gather your army, you press M, and you spam M on the unit's circle. So the unit will be like up here, and there'll be like a tornado here, and there'll be a circle about here. You want to look for the circle, which is basically the unit's pathing. And spam M on it, which is basically M is for move, and this will allow your units to sort of surround that cycloned unit, so when it does come down you can pretty much pick it off for free. So Cyclone is insane. You're just spamming out Talons, and when necessary and convenient you're going to get that Fairy Dragon later on. It's just relentless. See, the Tinker is just so useful. It does look like he went for Goblin Rockets and Pocket Factory. I don't think he's got the passive. Normally you just get Pocket Factory, but perhaps you do get Rockets as well. So I'm not an expert, so Bear that in mind, you could go either way, but I would assume that you'd get Pocket Factory and passive. It's just relentless. Our Orc player is trying to do a good job with the Raiders, harass him, but the Cyclone is pretty much going to guarantee 3 kills for our Night Elf, which is just going to feed him even further. You can see Ancients of War are being built at this point, which is actually quite typical, because Ancients of War are actually very useful versus Orc. Not when they're rooted down on the ground, because they'll take extra damage from Raiders, even then they're still quite solid. But you actually get a number of them at this point, because you don't really want to go over that food cap as a Night Elf player until you can totally and utterly afford it. But you're pretty much, because you've got Tri-Hero, you can keep spending your resources whilst underneath the food cap on like decent items. Orb of Venom, Scroll of Healing, Potion of Healing, Boost of Speed, another Scroll of Healing. Bear that in mind. So stay underneath the food cap, get mass Talons, use your gold on items, and then start to mass Ancients of War, because they can act as a defense for your base. Because when they're uprooted, basically they're just relentless, and it's not very convenient for the Orc to have to kill mass Ancients of War, let's face it, not in a battle. If it's free kills for them, maybe, but it's very rarely are they going to have the opportunity to do it, because you can see our Night Elf player is just relentless on them. York player is doing a fantastic job though, he's doing the best he can, and as you can see it's not an easy game for our Night Elf player by any means, but he is relentless, and these heroes are leveling up through all these constant battles. You will notice this. Don't be shy to have these fights. You're going to have a lot of fights, you're going to lose your units, you're going to lose your heroes potentially, but you're just going to be consistently leveling up. As long as you're not terribly giving away too much experience. You can see our Night Elf player loves looking for fights. This is what you do. And that Fairy Dragon, there we go. Mana Flare, that's the word. He's in Mana Flare mode. Unfortunately, it's not useful at the moment, but at that point in time, it could conveniently deal with the Spirit Walkers every now and then. Our Night Elf player is just consistently picking fights, but again, he's the one that's returning back to base. And look at this. This creep camp gets activated by daytime. Quite inconvenient for our Orc player, but he might be able to handle it if he can get a good position. And yes, our Night Elf player has decided to move his Tree of Eternity because it's run out of gold. And again, you can use this. Think of your Tree of Eternity as a portable gold mine if you want to take the risk, because bear in mind that once it's outside of your base, that is a tier 3 building, and if that goes down, you might be in some trouble. But you can do this. Now you can have all these Ancient of War. Where are they? Where the hell are they? Oh, they're up here. So they can be traveling wherever they want to go on the map. They can be aggressive, they can be looking for enemy expansions, they can defend your expansion. Basically, you need this expansion at this point because there is no gold left. Or they could just be sitting in your base to deal with enemy raiders, because Ancients of War do bonus damage because they are melee. So they do extra damage to raiders which have medium armor. So your basic gist here is Demon Hunter, Beastmaster, Tinker, Mass Talons, and a Fairy Dragon. Master Talons, spend your resources on items for your heroes. Otherwise, yeah, it is a very biased matchup, I believe, for Night Elf. It is quite potentially one of the most imbalanced matchups in Warcraft 3 currently running. Orc have a very tough time versus this. Mass Talons is super strong. Just the consistent amount of Cyclone, bringing the Blade Master and the enemy heroes out of the game all the time is just too much for Orc to deal with once they get to this point. You can see the Night Elf players lost so much, but he's still won because he's still got these talents and he's still got a hero left. And he's still got the expansion, which is safely protected. So our Orc player does give up at this point, because he just cannot win. Relentless. So that's how you do Night Elf versus Orc. Moving on to our next one, which is going to be Night Elf versus Undead, is an unconventional, well, it's not unconventional, it is used by pro players fairly often, but it is going to be rare to you, for example, if you are an average player, especially to me. I certainly wouldn't do this very often. It is Dark Ranger, Panda, Archers, Mercs, an expansion towards Bears, Dryads, Hippos versus a standard Undead. So yeah, that's quite a lot. So we'll see how that plays out. Hey there, this is our Night Elf versus Undead game. Nika versus DKH Rain. And he's going to do something a little bit more unconventional. Again, this is why I'm saying Night Elf is such a hard race to cover, because it comes down to how the map is and where you, what your situation is. Are you going for Tavern Hero? Do you want to creep in bizarre patterns? As we can see, our Night Elf player here does. This is strange, as you can see. He's clearly going for that Tavern Hero, so like I say, it's the Dark Ranger as mentioned before. He's getting himself an Ancient of War because this is going to grant him access to a mercenary camp. So generally Night Elf players are going to want a Ancient of War creep mercenary camp. So if there is one on a map that you are playing, there's probably a good chance that you want to learn how to Ancient of War creep it. So relatively standard build though, still considering it's a Tavern Hero, it's still Archers. And then you get a couple more because this is a tough creep camp to do. Pull them back. And you see that? I just missed that, but I can tell you what happened is the Archer pulled this creep camp back. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll just restart the replay and then I'll simply skip to that point. That will demonstrate exactly what you can do as a Night Elf player if you want to get access to a Shadow Priest or a mercenary camp unit. So we'll wait until the Archer's out. And then we'll cover that again. I don't want you to miss it. You can see the Archers coming out. So you're going to make the most out of this. Our Archer, alongside a Wisp, are going to achieve a Shadow Troll Priest. So the Archer is going to aggravate this creep camp. It's going to run back. Whilst that's happening, the Wisp is going to come out. And it's not a threat to the enemy units. So it's not going to aggravate them. Or it shouldn't do. And that way you get access to the Shadow Troll Priest. This Wisp is going to come to the back wood bit here. So it's no longer going to be threatening to the enemy units because they don't attack Wisps on the wood. For whatever reason they don't do it. A Shadow Troll Priest runs away whilst this creep camp is returning and is not a threat to them. So already our Night Elf player is off to a good start. He's got himself 2 Archers, a Shadow Troll Priest, and a Dark Ranger. So he's probably going to start creeping this camp, I believe, first, so he can start getting extra skeletons out, which is going to give him even more strength for dealing with that creep camp, because you see the skeletons are going to be useful for tanking alongside the Ancient of War. So we've got a few Archers. Ancient of War is getting ready to get into position. He's going to be used as a tanking. He's just going to absorb damage. Lightning Shield being cast on the units, being used productively to be a nuisance to the enemy units. Got to be a little bit careful there. You want the skeleton warriors to be taking the damage, so you want those close to the enemy units, and then the Archer can be close as well, as long as the Archer isn't taking damage initially. So we're just going to see lots of Mercs abuse here, Archers, that kind of stuff from our Night Elf player. Another Moonwell, so he's getting himself 3 Moonwells. He's got himself a Tree of Life during this process, so probably halfway through creeping that camp, if not a little bit earlier on, he started to build a Tree of Life. I think probably halfway through, because he's basically consistently thinking ahead. And on this map, versus Undead, a lot of races, I can't say every race, but a lot of races will go for a fast expansion. I know human players pretty much do. So we can see our Tree of Life. Our Ancient of War has already moved on, ready to start creeping this camp. We've got a strong enough army anyway. I keep saying we. I think that's just a bad habit, but I try to get out of it, but I don't know. Tree of Life going to be taking its rightful place next to the gold mine. Now upgrade is complete. Tier 2. Again, Night Elf players love mercenaries in every single form, essentially unit wise and hero wise. So taverns, you're going to see a lot of tavern heroes as a Night Elf player. Particularly your second hero is almost always going to be a Panda or a Beastmaster, and sometimes a Naga Sea Witch. And it could always be another one, but you know, those are the main ones really. Did I say Tinker? You got Tinker as well, but he's normally third. So our tech has been complete, and he's going for a standardish build. 2 Ancients of Law at the same time. We've got the shop there. The expansion's going through. She's coming back. She's going to pick up the Staff of Preservation, which is why I say a shop is very, very good to have. And I'm just going to kind of skip through a lot of this now, because it's just pretty much the point of massing Dryads. Getting abolished magic, mass Dryads. We've got Dark Ranger, we've got Panda, we've got Archers, Mercs, and Dryads. This is tough for our Night Elf player here, because our Undead opponent is about as strong as he's going to be at this point. He's reached Tier 3, he's got Orb of Corruption on his Lich, and he's ready to go. He's got quite a few ghouls here, he's got Tri-Hero, a few Fiends and Obsidian Statues, and Destroyers. So he's very strong at this point, and that Destroyer is going to be quite nasty against the Dark Minions. So this is where the Dark Ranger is probably going to not use Black Arrow quite so often, except for damage purposes. She'll be using Silence more often, which is very strong versus our Undead opponent. So using Staff of Preservation when possible. Dryads focusing the Destroyer, range on the Destroyer when possible. Panda just doing the best he can do to try to tank, but unfortunately the Dark Ranger is taking all the damage, so the Dark Ranger has to teleport back. She's going to teleport to the expansion so she can soak up the Moonwells and stay in the fight. It's still tricky. We're just going through this very, very quickly because you just see the amount of pressure. The only thing that's consistently being built is still Mass Dryads. This is pretty typical versus Undead. You'll probably move on to Bears when it's convenient and comfortable for you to do so. Otherwise, you're going to be focusing very heavily on Dryads. Staff of Preservation use, very good. Stopping the enemy from getting the kill on the Panda there. Mass Dryads, optimizing Clarity Pots from the Ancient of Wonders. And I believe we have got a Staff of Preservation on each hero. So basically you want to do that as a Night Elf player. Always get Staff of Preservation. Panda's got some tanky items. Ring of Protections, Parrot of Vitality. So bear that in mind as well. Your Panda is your tank essentially, so give him the tanky stuff. Dark Ranger is range, so providing you're using her smartly, you should keep her at the back. The Undead is relentlessly attacking, but Bears are now coming into play. We are ready. Tier 3 has been researched, which is why the Bears are our next step, and we've got enough Dryads at this point. Again, Bears, good for rejuvenation, but that can be cancelled by Destroyers. But remember that Devour, the Destroy ability, has a cooldown. Probably about 12 seconds or so, I would say on average. I can't remember exactly the number, so you know, you might be able to get away with rejuvenation if you time it right. But yeah, Devour is nasty. It gives them extra bonus damage versus Bears. So get Bears when you are comfortable enough to start pushing your opponent back. Now our opponent realizes that he cannot take down this expansion, and is definitely getting himself an expansion in return to try to stay in the game. So he's going to be focusing on Abos, Fiends, Statues, Destroyers, and then later on he's going to get a Frostworm to try to help slow down his opponent. But as a Night Elf player, just consistently attacking, being aggressive when it's possible. If it's good for you to be aggressive, then damn well do it. Because it's also, whilst you're being aggressive and offensive, you're basically defending your expansion because your opponent is no longer there. So think of it that way. A good offense is a good defense. Or a good defense is a good offense. Whatever. You know what I mean. So we got just consistent battles here, but it's a little bit messy, so it's not really demonstrating exactly what I want to show you other than just what you're seeing on the screen right now. You just want to focus on a hell of a lot of Dryads, Bears to help you out. Hippos are being produced because they are good versus Destroyers, and they're kind of a little bit of a meat shield in a weird way. They get webbed. They're kind of useless because there's enough Fiends there to web those Hippos, but they're kind of a distraction for the enemy. It's annoying to know that there's Hippos there that, when available, will always be sitting on your Destroyers, whereas it's a lot harder to bring down Destroyers with Dryads. They're good versus Destroyers, but Destroyers have a lot of health and Dryads don't do too much damage versus them, so it takes you a while to actually bring them down. Whereas if you've got a Hippo who's just consistently sitting on them, if the Fiends haven't webbed them, then yeah, it's quite nasty. Our Night Elf player's got so many resources now. He's got a very healthy chunk of Bears, he's casting the Roar, he's got a healthy chunk of Dryads, lots of Hippos now. And that's pretty much the consistency of the Night Elf army here if you're going Dark Ranger and Panda. This is your more standard sort of build. Versus, again, a standard Undead. He's got a Meat Wagon here to try to help disease his opponents, and the Meat Wagon is useful versus a collection of Dryads. Our opponent, rather, Nika, is very strong. Although then again, DKH Rain is only 5 food down, so he's not really far off it. He's quite strong himself. And one of the things to bear in mind is the danger of getting an early expansion. It won't show yet, but I'll show it later on. Is yeah, if you get that early expansion, and your opponent gets an expansion much later on, and you're still at a kind of stalemate point, your opponent's expansion has still got like 4 to 5k gold in it, so bear that in mind. As you can see, the Destroyers, annoying, they can get webbed, but they're just kind of consistently sitting on the Destroyers, so they're still worthwhile. We can still see they are worthwhile units, because they're just sitting on those Destroyers. Dryads and Bears. Bears just getting up in your face. Dryads just trying to slow down things in general and perhaps get hits on the Destroyers when convenient. Yeah, just lots and lots of awesome attack potential there. But attacking an Undead base is never an easy thing to do, so you're rarely going to win a game straight away when you do it. Needless to say, he's done a lot of damage and he's going to recuperate and come back in. Probably pick up quite a few healing scrolls, get a couple of healing scrolls by the looks of it. Invulnerability pot, that kind of malarkey. What's he got upgrade wise? Oh, he's gone heavy upgrades, and very smartly so. The reason why is because all of these units will benefit from the same upgrade types. So Dryads, Hippos, Bears all benefit from this same upgrade types. So yes, if you're going to be going this kind of composition, it's smart to get upgrades, especially when you're at like the 50 food plus mark, particularly when you're closer towards 80 food. So we can see just relentless attacks. Lots and lots of Wisps here. This is another thing you can do as a Night Elf player. Bear in mind that you will lose mana if the Wisps do detonate rather, in your vicinity as well. Just trying to keep an eye on the Panda, make sure that is true. Maybe not, I don't know. Maybe that was slightly off there, but I think it does. Anyway, it is useful to use Wisps, especially at this point in the game, late on in the game, if you're trying to finish the game off, to bring them into the opponent's like forces, especially undead that are very mana heavy. They're very spell reliant as well, opponents. So if you use a lot of Wisps and detonate on their heroes and their statues, you're going to do quite a lot of damage to your opponent's army. So yes, optimize Wisps when possible. And again, Frostworm here, useful guy, but not really useful at this point in the game now that so much damage has been taken. Our Undead is just trying to defend as best as possible. That's all he pretty much can do. He does actually have the expansion at this point. That expansion is running dry. Just going to keep skipping. As you can see, our Dart Ranger has actually got to the point now. Why am I on DKH Rain? Oh, here we go. Dart Ranger is level 6, so it actually stole the Frostworm. So it's pretty dangerous to go Frostworms when you're facing against a high level Dart Ranger. But hey, it still happened. And Hippos as well. But it isn't too untypical for an Undead to get a Frostworm in their mix, because the Frostworm does provide a good benefit of frost damage, which slows down enemy units and heroes and potentially buildings. If you've got the upgrade for it, it freezes them. So yeah, this is pretty much it. Just so you can see, Bears, Dryads, Hippos with Dark Ranger and Panda. So that's that replay for you right there. At this point, our Undead friend is pretty much decimated. There's almost nothing he can do, especially considering he's got another Frostworm, which I imagine is going to get stolen any second. There we go. Dart Ranger. So very useful later on for silence against undead heroes, so denying coils to save units, or stopping the Lich from spamming out Novas. And of course the charm ability, so that's pretty much what Dart Ranger is good. Not to mention that if you're against an undead opponent, which is why Dart Ranger is often selected as a Night Elf, is because you can't be death coiled. Because the Dart Ranger is already undead, technically, so she's immune to death coil. It won't hurt her. And no, the enemy can't use it to heal her either. Right, thank you for watching that little bit. We'll move on now to our next Night Elf versus Undead, which is going to be Demon Hunter, Panda, Archers, Dryads, and Bears. Sounds kind of similar, because this is pretty much what you're going to do as a Night Elf player. But what he's facing against is very different. He's faced against Gargs, so basically an opponent who... A lot of Undead will do this versus Night Elves. They'll go Ghouls and Gargs, and then he moves into really complicated stuff. Like, he moves into Abos and Meat Wagons and mass expansions. Quite complex stuff. So if you watched it alongside me, you might pick up on a few things. And you can always watch the replay as well, properly, in the brief description. Hey, this is our Night Elf game versus an Undead. Silent Force versus Bolrog. And, yes, you're going to see some Ancient of War creeping in a moment. That's a place to build it. Typically a Night Elf player on Twisted Meadows will build the Ancient of War next to the Knoll Warden camp if they are spawned next to the Goblin Merchant. If they are spawned next to the Mercenary camp, they'll build it here or here. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting sort of game, and it's very long, so I'm going to have to play at a very fast speed. Demon Hunter first. Your standard stuff, your Archer comes out. Although she's coming back in. Not Ancient of War creeping straight away. Maybe it's because he knows his opponent has scouted him and he's not interested in trying out that creep camp because he thinks his opponent is going to come in and try to steal the kill. So that might be a reaction you want to take, is a very defensive one. Or you could just take the risk and creep. apparently he decided not to. He's trying to make sure his opponent isn't near him by the looks of it, and he'll get a decent chunk of archers out so he gets more damage. That way he can take out the creep camp quicker by the time his opponent does get there. Looks like it paid off for him though, because he did actually manage to get that. Got the item, got the creep, and only lost an archer, which is kind of typical anyway, because Death Knight's going to Death Coil. And yeah, he gets away with the rest of the creep camp, so that's pretty good. Death Knight's picked up the boost of speed, denying the Demon Hunter from getting it. You pretty much always want to get a Demon Hunter boost of speed, because he's just awesome. He does a lot of damage, and if you can keep him up with your opponent, he's going to do even more damage. So we can see our Night Elf opponent, Night Elf friend, he's got himself, he knows what's coming up basically, because he's scouted with the Wisp. He's seen a double crypt. If you see an undead player with double crypt, you pretty much know they're going Gargs. So he's got himself Demon Hunter and Panda, both very strong heroes versus Garg play. 2 Ancients of Law, an Ancient Protector in the back of the base. This is how he's done it. So he's just continuing the creeping when convenient. He's also chopped through the wood with the Ancient of War, so that's something else you can do. If you are spawned at this position, it's very inconvenient, especially if your opponent's in this position, but it's still something you can do. Is if you can't have the mercenary camp as your first creep camp and you do the Knoll Warden camp, you can chop through the trees, use Eat Tree ability on the Ancient of War to make a pathway towards the actual mercenary camp nearby, and then take that. Night Elf players, they love their mercenary camps. I'm telling you, they love it. So you're probably expecting Gargs to be harassing at this point, which is why we've got the Ancient Protector here. Dryads coming out. Dryads are useful versus Gargs, but you've got to be careful. If Gargs get into stupidly large numbers, they can pretty much one-shot Dryads. Because they have this kind of, they have the flexibility of stacking up on top of each other, and they can do a volleyed attack, so they can pretty much hit the unit with all of their attacks at the same time. So Dryads don't quite have that luxury because they have a much shorter range, and they're obviously fairly chunky-ish units that they're fast, but they kind of get in the way. So you're going to lose quite a few Wisps here and there on this. So leaving a few archers back in base and an Ancient Protector looks like it's probably enough to deal with quite pesky Garg harass, and you can always bring in your hero. And our Death Knight was a little bit slow to react there. That's cost him quite a bit there. Probably didn't want to have to town portal out of that, let alone even have to use that. Yeah, didn't want to be in that situation. Undead is quite strong now, is getting the ghouls and the Gargs, so that's his build right now. Night Elf has gone Archers, still got the Ancient Protector, but he's not letting the Gargs phase him too much. He's trying to creep whenever possible because you want to. You want to get as strong as possible. Remember, you want to get to tier 3 as well because you want to get Orb of Venom. Orb of Venom is very, 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 very strong against Gargs because it allows you to hit them, and it also spreads damage over time. It's very useful. Can I just mention that Silent Force has really lucked out on the items here. Sobe Mask and the Demon Hunter has got 2 Boots of Quell for Lass. That is insane. That item there is really good on an agility hero. So, wow. Okay, so Undead is basically you making the most out of Twisted Meadows and creeping the gold mines at the corners, which are difficult to get to. You need a transport ship to get there, or air units. And yeah, he's going to be making the most of the gargoyles that way because he's given up pretty much harassing his opponent by the looks of it. Because his opponent, the Night Elf, although no, he's got enough Gargs, but is he going to creep this point instead? I'm not sure what he's up to. We can still see lots and lots of Dryads coming out for Night Elf. Looks like he's just going to be creeping this. So yeah, a few Archers, Ancient Protector, just smart play in general, being careful is probably good enough. But at this point, if your opponent does come in with both their heroes and a multitude of Gargs, you're probably going to want to respond to it. So, there is your response. Staff of Preservation used by the Demon Hunter on the Panda, who then can respond in kind with Drunken Haze and then Breath of Fire. That's a typical thing a Undead player wants to do, by the way, is if you do get Drunken Haze on you, then you go into Stone Form, which is a tier 3 research. It gets rid of the debuff effect and then you come out of it. So that way Breath of Fire won't do additional dot damage. An expansion here. I'm just going to really go through this quite quickly now because I know that all of these games are taking up quite a bit of time. And we're just pretty much going for the gist here. Mass Dryads is pretty much the gist. Dryads and Bears, your standard Night Elf really, so it's not really changing what you're doing too much. you're not going Talons. You can go Talons, but you don't really. Night Elf players almost always will go Dryads and Bears versus most opponents. Orc being the exception. But Dryads are always good anyway, even in versus Orc. It's always useful to have Dryads about. And as you can see, our Night Elf friend thinks so too, because he's pretty much only got Dryads. So lots and lots of Dryads. Now, his opponent is really mixing things up, because he's getting like meat wagons and abominations and tri-hero. He's got a Dreadlord as well as a third hero. This is quite tricky, because what do you do as a player? Well, this replay helps you to discover what to do, because our Night Elf friend is good and he knows what to do. He's being scattered by the shade. He's looking... He's spotted this expansion. I don't know whether he knew about it, whether he was just coming up here to creep it. But yeah, the Undead's getting carried away, just trying to take every expansion he can. Doing a weird style of play. So this is something you might end up facing on ladder, and it's quite bizarre, and I wanted to show it just because it's also quite fun. You can see, look, that's what do you do? I mean, what do you do? I'm surprised Silent Force did as well as he did. Got a bit unfortunate here, because this is the worst case scenario for a game, is you panic, your Tree of Eternity is getting caught out, and you TP in with barely any of your army, because the rest of these Dryads are up here. Worst case scenario for our Night Elf here. And also what makes this difficult is that his opponent has changed the tech completely. From like ghouls and gargs to mass abominations, a couple of fiends, and freaking 6 meat wagons. Very, very bizarre mix-up. But Silent Force, he will gradually show you what to do. So he's casting the rejuvenation, making the most out of that, keeping his heroes alive. Staff of Preservation, going to be using the Panda probably in a moment. No, doesn't need to be, because the Panda actually had a potion, and he also has the Amulet of Spell Shield, so it looks like the Demon Hunter is in an inconvenient spot anyway to run over there and cast a Staff of Preservation. So we can see our Undead player is so strong. Mass Abominations. When I was watching this the first time, I was like, what do you do against this? It's like... He wasn't expecting this. You can scout for the Gargs, and you're like, okay, but I wasn't expecting this. However, apparently, the counter to this is just Mass Dryads. And he's gone for 1 attack upgrade and 3, so he's maxed out armor upgrades. Pay attention to that. That might be interesting. Maybe that's what you're supposed to do, but that's something to note. He's got loads of Dryads versus this, and the meat wagons are nasty, so he's going to have to consistently try to bring them down with the Dryads, but he wants to get close to the meat wagons and make it more difficult for the Dryads to be taken out by the meat wagons. Demon Hunter does go down, which is kind of horrible for our Night Elf friend here, but he has still got a very strong Panda, and the one benefit of that is the Panda can get up to level 6 from all the bonus experience he's going to get in this big fight. Scroll of Restoration used by the Undead, because he got quite a few awesome items from killing the big dragons, so that's also hard to deal with. Scroll of Restoration, I think, is like 300 health to everything and 150 mana to everything on your team. It's uncapped. You can see, it's amazing. These Dryads are still done enough. He's trying to micro them as best as he can. Level 6 Panda really basically taking him to the point where he can actually possibly win this fight. Otherwise, I don't think he would have stood a chance. He cyclones the Death Knight and picks off the Dreadlord before the Death Knight can Death Coil. No, I don't know why there wasn't a Death Coil there. I don't know if I didn't pick up on that. And we're seeing Animate dead. So, yeah, just bizarre. But mass Dryads. Quite weird. But if your opponent goes a lot of Gargs, you want to be... really the point of this replay, I mean, a lot of this is just for fun, this bit. But the main point is you want to have like 1 Ancient Protector. Don't go too crazy on them, because then you're going to lose anyway, because you spent too many resources, especially wood, on defensive buildings, and then your opponent just gets carried away, starts creeping like mad, and then overtakes you on unit count, because you spent all of your resources on towers. So yeah, an Ancient Protector is very good. A few Archers is nice. They do pretty much pierce through Gargs very heavily, and you need quite a few chunks of Gargs, so probably about 8 or so Gargs to be a threat to the Wisps. 2 Gargs are a threat to the Wisps, but it will take them a while to kill a Wisp. What I'm saying is like 6 to 8 Gargs is going to kill a Wisp pretty quickly. So yeah, a few Archers and an Ancient Protector will help a lot versus that. Once you get to the point that your opponent has like really loads of Gargs, that's why our Night Elf friend here concentrated a lot on creeping is because he wanted to power up that Panda, because the Panda is going to be basically your key counter to the Gargoyles. With the Drunken Haze and the Breath of Fire, he's going to be your strongest counter to the Gargoyles as a Night Elf player. So really, that's what you're looking at. Few Archers, Ancient Protector to defend with, Dryads if necessary, and then try to level up your Panda ASAP, because he's the key. And this is it pretty much. Crazy game. Very weird, bizarre game, but you get the idea. So I'm going to stop this now. And you can always watch this replay properly if you wish to. But yeah, thank you very much. And the next replay bit I'm going to be coming on to. Alright, now we're moving on to the Night Elf versus Night Elf. So I've got 3 of these. And you're going to get a lot of Night Elf. And they're fun games, really. And the first one, we're going to be discovering different styles. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's a Night Elf versus Night Elf mirror match. Yet both the players do quite a bizarre thing. Not the same thing, basically, at the start. And it's good that one of them does one of the things, because I wanted to cover it anyway, and I may as well just start playing that video, so that way you can get an idea of what I'm even talking about. Hey there, this is our Night Elf versus Night Elf matchup, the first one of 3, and we're going to see different builds already from these 2 cheeky fellas. So they are Night Elf. They are going Altar first, so they're probably going to be going Demon Hunter first, but the one on the right is going to put an Ancient of War down here, so he can create this mercenary camp, as you saw before in the Dark Ranger Night Elf play versus Undead. You can creep out the mercenary camp with your Ancient of War. However, Padash, and I like this guy, is going to put down his first Ancient of War, not down here to creep. He's going to put it in the enemy Night Elf base, and on small maps, or if you can get to your opponent quickly, especially if it's Night Elf versus Night Elf, putting an Ancient of War in your opponent's base is actually very productive. It is genuinely a good cost production, but you have to weigh up the fact that whilst this Ancient of War is pretty much unstoppable for the early point of the game and doing a lot of damage, you don't have the power of creeping yourself, whereas Cornax does, and he will get the benefit of the mercenary camp and creeping. So we're going to see how this plays out. Ancient of War is going up. I believe Padash is probably going to tech up, so he's going for a fast tech whilst leaving the Ancient of War in his opponent's base to just be a nuisance. Meanwhile, Cornox is getting ready to creep this camp. He's going to get Lightning Shield cast on him because he's got... If you have 3 units bunched up together, so he had 2 Wisps and the Archer, the Renegade Wizard, should he have enough mana, will cast Lightning Shield on a unit. So you can use that Lightning Shield to your benefit. Just make sure that Lightning Shield doesn't get the last hit on the enemy unit. If it's cast by an enemy unit, like an AI creep, don't let Lightning Shield get the last hit because you won't get the experience for it. So he's coming over here, Wisp coming in to scout, see what's going on. Ancient of War just going to be basically consistently attacking the Tree of Life. There's not much Cornax can do about that Ancient of War at the moment. This is his best response, is to do this creep camp. Now Padash snuck in there with the Wisp and got himself the Troll Shadow Priest. So this denies his opponent from getting it, and as well it bolsters his army, so that's quite useful. He tries to get the last hit on the Renegade Wizard but doesn't get it. So Demon Hunter, Cornax's build allows him to get away with creeping this and get a level 2 Demon Hunter. And he could have got a Troll Shadow Priest should he chose to do it, but Padash beat him to it. And Padash is just in the base, being a nuisance, trying to pick off Wisps when possible. So it doesn't look like Cornax is going to have to sacrifice a few Wisps for his creeping experience. And he's going to get another Ancient of War down here. And we can see the tier 2 is halfway through for Padash and Hunter's Hall. So he's really focusing on that tier 2, because I don't see any Ancients of War for him. So he's doing that type of build. Whereas Cornax is now teching up to tier 2. Now that he's comfortable, he's got access to the mercenary camp. But don't forget that Padash also has access because he has the Wisp here. So you can have your Wisps by a mercenary camp and get access to the Mercs. I don't know if he picks up an item here. He does. He sells his Ring of Protection, buys a boost of speed from the marketplace, which you can always optimize as well. And it differs on certain maps. Marketplace isn't going to be on every map. So we can see that Padash realizes that his Ancient of War has done pretty much what it's going to be doing. It's going to eat up the tree, it's going to root, which is going to give him that much more life, and he'll still have access and range to hit trees and enemy units, and it will still do the same amount of damage. So this is the smartest thing Panda can do in this situation. But Cornax handled the situation very well. He concentrated, he stayed calm, he crept, whilst just making sure not to lose too much. And that was the smarter thing to do, I think, in this situation. The Ancient of War in an enemy base is a gimmick style of play, and sometimes it can work, but if your opponent is very smart and plays it calm and cool, you can clearly see that they have the advantage. Now, Panda does have the tier 2 advantage. He's got access to that second hero, and he's almost got his Ancients of Law up already, whilst his opponent is still stuck on Archers and Berserkers. So, yeah, you can look at it that way. Really, it could go either way still. The game is far from over. We have got an Ancient of War from Cornax, who snuck an Ancient of War over here, thinking ahead, because he knows that his opponent is probably at the tier 2 stage and is getting ready to start massing an army, but doesn't quite have the army yet. So if he gets an Ancient of War aggressively in his opponent's space, he can be... It will help it... Sorry, got a bit of hiccups there. It will help him have a presence here. So Naga Sea Witch has been selected as a second hero for Cornax. That's going to help him pick off units or enemy heroes that get too close. Allows him to stop them from being so much of a threat. Now the funny thing is Panda, I think, keeps buying mercs from basically the mercenary camp on the other side because he doesn't have access to his own one. So you can see he's got the Mud Golem, and he gets various merc camps, and this allows him to produce units still whilst these Ancients of Law are coming up. Unfortunately for Panda, the Ancients of Law don't really work out too well. I guess he hasn't been in this situation too often, but you can see the Ancients of Law really don't hold up very well. Not like the Ancients of War do, not quite as well. They're not like, they've only got like 100 less health, but in this situation, the Ancients of Law weren't too useful as sort of defensive mobile units. And generally, you can see that playing it calm and smart, creeping, getting access to the mercs, even though Panda did also have access to the mercs, because Panda has been forced to be super defensive, and this allows basically Cornax to go ahead and take the win. Because that's just what I wanted to show you from this game. It's just sort of like, an unorthodox build versus a standard build, and unfortunately the unorthodox build didn't win, but it was still fun to see how you can play it out, and you can always get away with it potentially. Panda just didn't have the most luck this game, but I have seen that work before. So if you do see an Ancient of War in your base, don't treat it as a joke. It is still a serious threat, but stay calm, creep, do everything that is optimal to you, and then deal with the Ancient of War, and make sure you don't lose anything in the process whilst defending your base. And then there's not really much else to say at this point. Cornax pretty much takes the win. Panda is too far behind. He's still in the game, but as you can see, it's hurt him too much. So that's a build you can use, as I'm saying, but practice it a lot first, and then go from there. Cornax is now taking the mick himself by building mass Ancients of War in his opponent's base. Despite his opponent being super defensive with those Ancient Protectors, Panda got a bit unlucky as well, because he moved his Ancient Protectors out here, which was a risk, and a very big risk indeed, because they got caught out and picked off by Cornax's army as he was approaching here. He's also got Glaive Throwers, and yeah, it's just... It does look like Panda is pushing him back, but believe me, he does lose this in the end, because the mass Ancients are just going to take over. So really, it does go to show you how much of a close fight this still is. So you can get away with that Ancient of War build at the start if you want to. And the way you do it is it's simply, instead of building it like down here or where you would normally do it to Ancient of War creep, you build it as fast as you can in your opponent's base. So essentially you're going to build it almost straight away. That's the Ancient of War creep in the opponent's base. It's pretty effective, really. But unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be enough. Panda super heavily reliant on mercenary camps, because he's lost both of his Ancients of Law, so essentially he lost that tier 2 advantage that he had, and is now stuck on mercenary camp creeps. Meanwhile, we've got a lot of archers here for Cornax, but he's just getting himself into a decent position. I'll tell you what, it looks like Panda actually wins this. I can't remember now. No, get out of it. Get out of it. Get out of it! I swear I watched that all the way through. I obviously didn't. I assumed that Cornax won it. Brilliant! Okay, well I'm actually really happy with that because that means the unorthodox build did win. So it goes to show you how strong that really was. A bizarre game. I wouldn't necessarily advise doing exactly everything Padash did, but it goes to show you that the Ancient of War at the start of the game can be very useful. I think Cornax must have threw it away though, to be honest, because I think he had the game, and I'm not sure what really happened at the end there to allow him to lose to mass Mercs, but your guess is as good as mine. I really just wanted to show you the differences there of a standard build of creeping and then a guy that basically fast techs to tier 2 and puts an Ancient of War in your base. That's something you can do. Right, the next one is going to be Night Elf versus Night Elf on Turtle Rock. Demon Hunter, Naga, Tinker. Oh, those are the heroes. Archers, Talons, and Fairy Dragons and Hippos. Mirror match. So this was a really cool replay to come across because basically this is a good inclination of another type of build you can do as an Night Elf player that isn't necessarily the standard Dryads and Bears. And both of these players do this exact same build. So they're both going those heroes and those units. So you've got an exact mirror match. So it's quite useful as a Night Elf, as someone that wants to learn Night Elf. You're going to get quite a lot out of this next replay. Hey, this is Remind versus Empire Jade. Night Elf versus Night Elf Mirror. Both going the altar at the start. I think the slight difference between the two players, this is Turtle Rock, is Remind is going to put his Ancient of War up towards this creep camp, whereas Jade is going to have his closer towards his base. This is, again, I can't stop saying this, but it is essentially why the Night Elf build order isn't a straight up one. It's quite flexible and it really depends on how you want to play it. They are the most flexible race I find of all the races, so they are therefore the most complicated because really it isn't set in stone what you're going to do all the way through, unlike some races. Now I'm going to be really quick through this game because it's not that long, but the point I really want to get to is just when you see. I'll point out the things that are interesting. Basically, Demon Hunter, 3 to 4 archers for both teams. Then they're both ticking at roughly the same time. You're going to see boost of speed always being picked up by Demon Hunter when possible, so nothing really too odd there. Upgrade has been finished, so what happens is both players get a Naga Sea Witch exactly the same time because they have access to the tavern. And it looks like Remind won that little fight between those two heroes. So we've got Demon Hunter, Naga, and Archers. Moving on, we're going to start to see things get a little bit more strange. Now you might consider that Ancients of Law would be built, but this is, of course, as mentioned previously, not a game that involves Ancient of Laws. It actually has Ancient of Winds. So this is an archer-heavy build, so the research probably would have been upgraded. I think it's upgraded bows or something like that. Basically, it gives archers extra range, I think, or extra damage. It must be extra range. Yes, that's the tier 2 upgrade. So Demon Hunter, Naga Sea Witch, archers, still lots of creeping whilst moving towards Ancients of Wind and Talons, basically. So you're going to see lots of that soon. And then both players are going to be taking towards tier 3. Basically identical timings. This is so fascinating, and I do suggest you watch this replay properly. I just really want to show you the unit compositions more than anything. So we've got Demon Hunter, Archers, and Talons. Now the reason why you do blast through here to tier 3, and this is a very strong build, is all of these units are super cheap, yet very strong. And Tri-Heroes are basically your kind of tanks. You know what I mean? Naga Sea Witch isn't exactly a tank, but if you're going very fragile units like Archers and Talons, Naga Sea Witch can be considered a tank in comparison to them. But yes, you're going to be going like triple heroes here, because they're going to basically be, you know, the utility of your army. And the Talons are also a utility for Cyclone, but really they're kind of providing damage bonuses because of the Fairy Fire. So we're going to see Tinkers. We've got a Tinker already for Jade, and I'm sure we'll see a Tinker in a moment for Remind. Tinker's going to throw down Pocket Factory, which is again going to be a bit of a blocker. It's going to be producing summoned units. It's just going to be extra units to be a hassle to your enemy. And I don't think I'm going to catch it, but once you do get... where is that Ancient of War? I don't even see it. Maybe he lost it. Okay, well anyway, in your Ancient of War, once you get tier 3, you get the next Archer upgrade, which will give them bonus damage, I believe. So you definitely want that. Strength of the Moon. 16 to 18. At any rate, you want to get all the upgrades for Archers and all the upgrades for Talons and triple hero by the looks of it on this build. This is quite fun because it's essentially the equivalent of a human mirror where they all go sort of like Archmage and then whatever second hero choice they wish to go. But yeah, it'll be Archmage and a second hero, but mainly it's the units that are always the same: Priests, Orcs, and then mass Spellbreakers. So in this case it's mass Archers and Talons, and this is where the Fairy Dragons start to come in, because they're going to be used as a counter to the Talons, and of course Staff of Preservation being used by both players to save the heroes, because the heroes are essentially tanking this, whilst the units, you get a decent amount of damage, plus you can actually really pick off the Talons quite easily with the Archers, so you've got that to consider. But the Talons are also very useful for the Cyclone, so it's quite insane really. And then yeah, just great play from both. You're going to have Hippos as well as a sort of counter to the Fairy Dragons, I suppose, a little bit. I thought I'd mention it because you do see the Hippos in this game. Whether they're that necessary or not, I can't say for sure, but they're there. Or at least one was. Maybe oh no, we're going to see more. But yeah, this is pretty much the gist of this. It's Demon Hunter, Naga Sea Witch, Goblin Tinker, Archers, Talons. All those units fully upgraded. Naga Sea Witch taking Frost Arrows and Fort Lightning. Demon Hunter is going to be Mana Burn and Evasion. And Goblin Tinker is going to be Pocket Factory and his passive. Fairy Dragons are always going to be casting Mana Flare in between the big battles, which is going to be very useful because it is just an awesome ability, very cost effective if you can get the most out of it. Looks like Remind went for an expand, but I'm not sure if that was worthwhile because it does look like Jade has the upper hand here. And in all honesty, I think this is pretty much all I needed to show you. It is just kind of interesting. There's not really much else. It does look like this game's going to go on for like another 10 minutes or so, and it's pretty much going to be the same unit composition. It's not going to change much. It's still mass Archers, it's still mass Talons. There is one thing that's interesting though, is neither of the players got upgrades on the Archers. So I'm not sure why that is exactly. I guess they're just there, but not really that important. It's the heroes that are important. So the resources are probably being spent on items for the heroes. Demon Hunters got Orb of Venom, Potion of Healing. Invulnerability pots are always useful. This looks like it's going quite bad. Empire Jade does pick off the Tinker there. Lots of Cyclone. Cloak of Flames, very good item for the Tinker. He's quite tanky. Invulnerability pot for the other Demon Hunter and Orb of Venom, as you can see. Naga Sea Witch, got the Staff of Preservation. And don't forget Dust of Appearance when you're in a Night Elf mirror for like nighttime. Pretty important. Anti-Magic Potion, also quite a useful item. It's just these big battles. I just keep skipping towards the big battles. But it does look like Empire Jade has pretty much got it, in all honesty. He looks like he's coming out on top in every sort of fight at this point because he pretty much... it's his game to lose by the looks of it. So we'll just keep on it and we'll see whether Remind can actually come back here. If Jade basically slips up by being too aggressive in an enemy base. The map is probably crept out at this point. Almost crept out at least. Got to be Potion Scroll of Healing. Yeah, Scroll of Healing will go a long way on Druids of the Talon and Archers because they are... it will pretty much heal an Archer from 1 health to maximum health. Well, not quite. But it does do a lot. You know, that is an exaggeration, but it does heal a lot, okay. Especially on a very low HP army such as this. Now let's keep going. Fairy Dragons, Archers, Talons. There really isn't that much else to say. It's just quite fun to see that these two players did exactly the same thing. So that insinuates to me that this is a useful build out there for you guys to learn. Because I can't imagine that two players would be doing an identical build like this unless it was somewhat useful in some way, shape or form. As you can see, anti-magic potions really useful at this point in time. Useful against the Talons, but I think Jade probably has it. He's forced to keep fighting in these situations where he's like against an extra component, such as a Tree of Eternity and such. So he's never quite having straight up fair fights, but he does have the advantage and he's pretty much keeping it by the looks of it. He's getting a little bit battered, but he does have the expansion, so I can't see Jade losing this. Unless he messes up, because it is a mirror match, so really it comes down to a case of do you throw the game away or not. Tinker's going down. Maybe another Tinker kill. No, not quite. It's quite horrible to have to play this, I imagine, because you've got to have to micro like mad. I mean, that suits me, but for a lot of players, even me, really, this looks like a hell of a lot of hard work. The amount of concentration required for like 3 heroes and making sure that the Archers and the Talons are doing exactly what they should be doing, hitting the exact units, cycloning what they should be at the exact right moments, using the items, positions, abilities, everything. It does look like it is a little bit more advanced. Oh my goodness. Just chaos. Don't tell me that Jade lost this. Oh, come on. Come on. What's going on? That's the second time now. Yeah. Well, that was an interesting watch. And apparently a viable build should you wish to use it yourself as a Night Elf player. Now, our next game to watch. Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. I've saved the best to last. This is old school, basically. You probably won't see this style very often, but since I caught it on a replay, I thought it was well worth showing it to you. So, yeah, get ready for Priestess of the Moon mass hunts. Proper old school. This is the Frozen Throne as well. This is a build that was very oftenly used in Reign of Chaos, where Night Elf players would... Well, Huntresses were a lot stronger back then, and they would just go Priestess of the Moon, True Shot Aura, and mass Huntresses. And it was just pure micro fun. Beautiful, good old days. But yeah, we'll get to relive a little bit of that in a moment. Hey guys, welcome to the third Night Elf versus Night Elf replay between Star Shaped and SK Hot Night Elf mirror match. And it is quite a mirror match indeed. Because it's Priestess of the Moon and mass hunts. What more could you want? So both players are going for Altar of the Elders straight away, so they can get access to the Priestess of the Moon. But they don't get an Ancient of War to AoW creep with, because they're going to be aiming for mass hunts, both of these players. Well, at least one of them definitely, but you'll see why the other one also goes towards mass hunts. That was funny. Just does that for lols, just to aggro the creeps. But we can see Star Shaped goes for an expansion here. But one thing that's very important is his opponent is going to be going mass hunts. Double Ancient of War. So the Wisp sees this, and very shortly afterwards is like, oh hell no. I'm going to cancel that Tree of Life. So you can see the Tree of Life no longer exists. It's been cancelled because you don't want to have to deal with mass Huntresses when you're expanding with no units. So Star Shaped in a bit of a fuddle, but he is getting himself back into the game. Hunter's Hall, double Ancients of War. So this is the build. If you really want to do this kind of build, and this can be used for team games, so this is good if you want to play for 4 versus 4 RT and you want to learn sort of Priestess of the Moon and mass hunts, that kind of double Ancient of War tier 1 mass build. Then I highly suggest you check this replay out and probably watch SK Hot's version of it, because as you can see, Star Shaped did it with a Tree of Life first expansion, which he didn't keep, so that's probably not going to be the exact right build order for you. So we can see we're just waiting for this Hunter's Hall. You probably want the Hunter's Hall just a little bit earlier, that way you can start double pumping the hunts, but anyway, you can only double pump the hunts when the resources allow, and they do allow. So we're going to see double hunts pumping and Ultra Vision being researched, which is going to give the Huntresses just that little bit extra vision in night time, and it's always good in a Night Elf mirror match. And it looks like Star Shaped realigning his Ancients here, and they're both going for Ultra Vision and 3 Moonwells by the looks of it, and then it's just going to be mass Huntresses between the two players. Very funny stuff indeed. Doesn't look so funny at the moment, does it? But you wait until you wait until they've got like 50 foods worth of Huntresses. So already aggression, just this kind of micro style of play. Searing Arrows and True Shot, you're playing around with that, just trying to dig on a certain Huntress, getting it, forcing the opponent to micro that one back. Remember that Huntresses have splash damage as well, so if you can try to, say for example that one's really injured and this one's your main focus, you could hit that one and then kill that one and, you know, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. This Huntress has been caught out here. Nice little surround there by SK Hot, picking off a Huntress, giving his Priestess of the Moon a little bit of experience. Oh my goodness, look at that. Let's just keep an eye on what's going on build-wise between the two players. Still mass Huntresses for Star Shaped. No tech, 4 Moonwell, so he's sitting at the 50 food point. SK Hot Again, he's going to be at the 50 food point, going for the... he hasn't quite built his next lot of units, so I'll keep an eye on that. But we've got a little bit of micro going on here. SK Hot having to move back those Huntresses. It looks like Star Shaped is in a better position here, but those are more Huntresses. They're getting a better angle. You've got to remember your angle because of the splash. The glaives hit onto an extra unit, and at tier 3, you can research the glaives to hit an additional unit. So it doesn't look like SK Hot is pulling back here, but it's not a comfortable win for Starshaped, but he's definitely slightly ahead there. He definitely did well, but they both did. They both got a Huntress kill at the very least. And they're going to have to soak up their Moonwells. There we go. Yeah, SK Hot still going very heavy on the hunts. I'm just going to keep an eye on both of the players. They're going to be creeping or maybe continuously attacking. You can see the Huntress was blocking the Priestess of the Moon there. So Huntresses are fast units. You can use them in that fashion. If you can get in front of an enemy unit or hero and just consistently move in front of them, the direction they're going, you can block their path and it'll allow your other Huntresses to sort of continually attack. Looks like SK Hot's going to pick up an item. Not sure what he's going for, because he's already got boosted speed. Scroll of Healing and Scroll of Protection. Useful item indeed in a matchup like this. You can see, oh my goodness, it's like it's fixed or something. Star Shaped also got himself a Scroll of Healing and Scroll of Protection. So these are two very key component items in a matchup like this. So Scroll of Protection, you rarely see it get bought, but it's clearly very useful for a Huntress matchup. And Scroll of Healing is always very useful in big sort of army fights. It looks like it's slightly better for SK Hot here, so it does look like Star Shaped is pulling back a little bit. An Ancient Protector being produced by Star Shaped. I'm not exactly sure what the purpose is for that. Maybe a backup plan in case things go wrong, and he might need it. Scroll of Protection being used by both players. Wisps being used to detonate and get rid of the freaking Scroll of Protection. Very smart play indeed. So that gets rid of the benefit of that item. Oh, wow. You do not see this very often. Scroll of Healing being used to save those units by SK Hot. Scroll of Healing very good, because in big micro matchups like this, and this is half speed at the moment, big micro matchups like this, everything counts, and Scroll of Healing can go a long way, because if you can try to distribute the amount of damage your units take, then you're going to get the maximum bang for your buck out of that Scroll of Healing. Because if you have like 6 Huntresses on full health and 2 Huntresses on low health, and then you use your Scroll of Healing, it's not going to be very good. Whereas you've got all of your Huntresses on like half health, then that's going to be much better use for your Scroll of Healing. So bear that in mind when you're using Scroll of Healing. Do not burn through it too fast. Try to micro. Make sure that you use it at the last possible moment before a unit dies, so that way you can get the most out of it. Oh my goodness, it looks like Star Shaped is winning this fight, but so many Huntresses still going to go down. Oh, it's crazy. Finally level 2 for our Priestess of the Moon, SK Hot, which he probably wanted that quite a bit earlier on. But that's probably what maybe caused him to lose this fight, because Star Shaped is now up to level 3. He's got more Huntress kills, he's got more kills in general. But there are also Huntresses for SK Hot to pick off. And both... Oh! SK Hot looks like he sacrificed himself on the creeps, because I think the Priestess of the Moon might be able to be chased down. I don't know if she's as fast as Huntress is, but either that was a misclick or a deliberate get yourself killed before the enemy kill you and deny them experience. I'm going to sway towards a misclick myself personally, because I don't think you absolutely had to do that. However, he is making the most out of this scenario, and he's getting himself a Troll Berserker, which is going to do additional damage versus Huntresses. A very good unit versus mass Huntresses. Star Shaped gets to survive with his Priestess of the Moon. And he's going to start punishing SK Hot for losing the micro battle. Now, Star Shaped, we can see is teching up now to tier 2. And he's TPing out because he just doesn't want to risk losing anything. The advantage he has. And I guess he assumes that running out this way isn't going to be any better, because SK Hot can run around and basically try to track him down. But I think that might have been a slight overreaction. But clearly Star Shaped was in a position where he's like, right, I do not want to lose any advantage whatsoever here, apart from obviously losing the Scroll of Town Portal. But he just didn't want to sort of like risk getting into a fight where he lost a few Huntresses and be like, damn it, I wish I Town Portaled earlier. As you can see, he's got a decent chunk of units. SK Hot on 35 food, but Star Shaped on 42 food, and that food count really matters. I'm sure that Scroll of Healing has been picked up once again, because it's really needed for these Huntresses. As you can see, it's going to deny them from dying. Star Shaped still in a stronger spot here, but the Troll Berserker is going to be useful for picking off Huntresses a little bit easier than Huntresses picking off Huntresses, because he does more focused and heavier damage on single target units. Oh my goodness. Huntresses just going to town. Priestess of the Moon's being chased all over the shop. Starshaped might actually lose his Priestess of the Moon. It almost definitely will if SK Hot does it right, because SK Hot has a boost of speed. Starshaped does not have a boost of speed, and he does not have a town portal, so he's definitely going to lose his Priestess of the Moon there. So a very smart move there by SK Hot. He picked up the boost of speed and he chased down his opponent's Priestess of the Moon, because he knew that his opponent's Priestess of the Moon did not have a boost of speed and was on very low health. So good move there. Oh my goodness, he's moving back now. Boost of speed, definitely going to run away from Huntresses this time. Looks like our Star-Shaped has picked up his Priestess of the Moon from the tavern, because he's desperate to get it back. He doesn't want to wait. And it is a level 3 hero, and these take forever for some reason. It feels like they do anyway, if you take them from the altar. SK Hot using his Scroller Town Portal, not risking a single thing like his opponent earlier. Just wants to get back, get fully healed up, or as healed up as he can be. And I'm sure this is when things get weird. We see an Alchemist get selected by Starshaped, but I believe that SK Hot sticks with Priestess of the Moon and mass hunts. So we'll see what the Alchemist does for this, but up until this point, very, very old school, just Priestess of the Moon mass hunts. A lot of fun. Scroller protections and scroller healings, things you don't see that, well, scroller healing you do see, but you know what I mean. You don't see this very often, so I thought this would be a really fun little replay to finish off on, and it's also something that you can learn, and it's probably one of the replays aside from the standard build order and maybe the mass archer and talons. In fact, it's just another additional style of build that you can use should you wish to enter the 4 versus 4 or team game arena, because mass is strong in that arena. Okay, we can see Starshaped using Shadow Meld wisely, because his opponent doesn't know he's here yet, or does he? He has got Dust of Appearance, so is he going to use it? Is he going to suspect it? He might suspect it, because remember that Shadow Melded units are invisible, however they still exist. So if your units are getting blocked by an invisible barrier, or they're sort of like bumping into something, there's probably a good chance that might be an invisible unit. Okay, so just bear in mind, that's something else as a Night Elf player. When you're coming across other Night Elves, pay attention to that, because that might actually, you know, be a big win for you if you can actually spot an invisible unit. Oh, here we go. I think Star-Shaped initiated the fight there. He just went straight for it. But SK Hot was clearly on attack move, so his units started attacking straight away, which is why it's smart to attack move if you're going in general directions, because if this sort of thing happens, instead of SK Hot's units moving and taking damage for free, because he was attack moving, it meant that as soon as Star-Shaped activated, you know, battle between the two players, SK Hot's units automatically responded by attacking themselves. So here we go. I'm going to use the scroll healing probably soon. You probably want to get the Priest of the Moon and take a bit more damage on the remaining units before he uses that scroll healing, but it depends how risky that Priest of the Moon gets. No, it's in a great position. It's falling back here. We can see no, another scroll healing here is going to be used probably in a moment, maybe. No, not just yet. Needs to take a bit more damage on the overall amount of Huntresses. Neither players use their oh no, wait. Gonna see it in a moment. Dust of Appearance used, Shadow Meld used. Now's the great time to use Scroller Healing. So SK Hot blows for it. And you can see that SK Hot has started to bring Archers into his composition. So Archers do additional damage versus Huntresses. Bear in mind that both players are upgrading, but Star-Shaped has focused a bit more on upgrading, so he has that advantage. However, Archers counter Huntresses more heavily if they are protected. If Archers are unprotected, then Huntresses are going to pretty much run over them. But if they're sitting at the back here with some Huntresses to sort of tank, and they're in a position where they can't be reached very easily by enemy Huntresses, then Archers are very, very strong units in this matchup. Okay, so it looks like SK Hot is going to chase down Star-Shaped. Will he get the kill on the Alchemist? The Alchemist is still pretty nifty by the looks of it. And he's going to sacrifice himself on the creeps. Another hero sacrifice to deny experience. There is a little bit of Moonwell juice to pick up here, but not all that much. Still mass Huntresses. Star-Shaped at 39 food now. 44 food. So 47 food, there we go. It's 47 food, and there's his resources at minimum. Meanwhile, SK Hot, 55 food, and his resources are actually looking quite healthy at this point. He's got a lot of wood. So he's got a hell of a lot of archers. He's probably picking up more scrolls of healing and a scroll of protection. Remember, with mass units, Scroller Protection is going to be very good because it has no cap. The same with Scroller Healing. There is no cap to the amount of units it heals or, you know, gives armor to, those two items. So we're going to have a huge fight here, but SK Hot does have a slight advantage because he's got 8 food more. But Starshape does have that second hero, and it is providing an additional utility because it is providing sort of acid bomb, which reduces the armor of the opponent's units. So that means that Starshape's units are going to do even more damage, and they're already quite well upgraded. But there are a hell of a lot of archers here, so that's clearly SK Hot's style of play here. Is to very risky here though. Pay attention to this. Very smart play by Starshaped. He's split his army. And what he's going to do here is he's going to flank because he knows his opponent has the strength for the archers. And the archers are really strong, as mentioned before, when they are behind defenses. If they are out in the open, they are super vulnerable. And Starshape does not want to run all the way back to his base because that's a good time for archers to be, ooh, look, a huge arc of archers. And then Huntresses here, Priestess of the Moon sitting here. And if Starshape wants to fight against it, he's going to have to deal with those archers sitting sort of like behind the tree line, and just it's difficult to get to them. Whereas if he starts the fight before his opponent gets to his base here, he can do some awesome damage. So you can see he's moving straight in for the kill. You can clearly see he's very focused. Scroller Protection being used by SK Hot. And he's getting all those Huntresses, and they're going to use all of those lovely glaives to spread around these archers. And these archers will drop very quickly. Starshape now level 4 with the Priestess of the Moon. And Rock Golem getting in on the fight as well to make this more comical. I don't know if one of the players activated it, but they must have done it some way. You can see the Mercs are getting on this. You kind of have to watch this stuff at half speed because it's so micro crazy. Acid Bomb being used in a nice chunk, and the AoE of it is going to be useful. Picking off a Huntress here. Star-Shaped did a good job picking off the majority of those archers, but I still think he was at a slight disadvantage because his opponent still had more units. However, he does have the upgrades and that hero, which is now starting to get stronger and stronger. And he's going strong on the Priestess of the Moon. SK Hot having to move back his Priestess of the Moon because she's taking a lot of damage actually now. But he has still got a decent chunk of units here, which will probably win the unit fight. He needs to be careful with that Priestess of the Moon. That was a real risky move there. But it looks like he's going to get away with it. He's taking the risk, but it's going to pay off because the Alchemist's Chemical Rage ability has worn off, which means his movement speed has slowed down. And SK Hot's going to make the most out of the movement speed that his Priestess of the Moon has and the additional damage with that Searing Arrows, and basically kite the Alchemist and then finish it off. Meanwhile, Starshape getting himself in a bit of a predicament here and actually getting surrounded by SK Hot's Huntresses in an attempt to actually bring down the Priestess of the Moon. Oh, nice try with the Searing Arrow, but not enough. Like I said, this is a fantastic game, and it's really fun to watch this. See, a good healthy mix of Huntresses and Archers. Always have a certain amount of Huntresses for the tank, but having those archers is useful because Huntresses will start to block each other after a while because they have a very short range. They're quite chunky, and in small enclosed areas you might have a bunch of Huntresses at the back that just aren't going to do much. Star-Shaped now in a bit of a awkward spot because he is yeah, oh my goodness, this is very clever by SK Hot. Star-Shaped is getting his Alchemist back, and I don't think he has his Priestess of the Moon yet. But if you notice, if you get a hero from a tavern, it spawns at the bottom. But what position has SK Hot done? He's put a Huntress here, a Huntress here, a Huntress here. That means that if Starshape does get his hero back, it's going to spawn in between these Huntresses and be trapped. Very clever. Okay, let's get back into the action. Trying to bring down the altar. Will he get away with it? Will the Alchemist be denied? It looks like the Alchemist is probably just about going to come out. Oh, that's harsh because he's lost a little bit of the advantage he had there. And his Alchemist has come out. And he's going to take quite a lot of extra damage on his units. Not to mention the Priest of the Moon is definitely in a little bit of trouble. Not quite at the moment, but certainly all of his units are pretty much going to get killed, especially if the Priest of the Moon comes in a little bit too close there. Surprised the Alchemist didn't Chemical Rage there, probably a little bit of a panic there. Just making sure he does everything he can, but also forgetting that he had the opportunity there. Mass Huntresses still for Star-Shaped. We're looking at 2-2. I can only assume that both players, they are sitting at Tree of Ages and Tree of Life. So they didn't go for Tree of Eternity, so they didn't go for the glaive upgrade. So that's one thing to note. You can do, but both of these players didn't. So there's probably a reason why they didn't, is they probably felt it was more worthwhile concentrating on tier 2 or tier 1 and just mass huntresses. Alright, so here we go. Does look like Starshaped is going to try to bring back his Priestess of the Moon. He's getting ready into position. Oh, SK Hot's units are in a bad predicament spot here. And it looks like Alchemist might be popping over to get himself a Dust of Appearance so he can pick off the units. SK Hot, is he going to pick up? He's picked up 2 Scroll of Healing. That's going to be very good because he's going to need it. Now he's going to activate the fight while Starshaped doesn't have his Alchemist nearby. He's got the Priestess of the Moon there. Priestess of the Moon is being focused and the Dust of Appearance denies it from being able to stay in Shadow Meld. Looks like SK Hot's going to get level 6 and he's going to activate Starfall just for lols because he won't be able to keep it up for very long. Although it did do quite a bit of damage and he's going to have to keep running away. No, the Alchemist is going to catch up and get the finishing kill on the Priestess of the Moon. And it looks like Starshaped actually has enough Huntresses here to take away the rest of the win versus the unit versus unit battle. Alchemist looks like the additional key to this match. What a game. I really wanted to finish off with that one and I really enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that as well. And if you really want to help me out, please like this video. Thumbs it up right now and that will go a long way. It will allow other players that are aspiring to be Night Elves and learn about Night Elf. They'll see the video and it will help everyone. And if you want to see more, you can subscribe and favourite the video if you want to see it again. And share this video with your friends if any of them would be interested. Thanks very much again. And I hope you enjoyed this Night Elf build order video guide. Once again, take care. See you later.
Troll. I used to be a troll rogue. Troll.
Oh, cool.
I ain't got time.
I was in one of the top guilds. Do you know Method?